guys ready? I'll go ahead and call the Board of County Commissioners meeting of January 21st to order. Just as a matter of housekeeping, if anybody from the public is wishing to speak, please fill out a speaker card out front so the clerk has that for our records. And with that, we're going to start with a moment of silent reflection for first responders and members of the armed forces, followed by an invocation by Commissioner Flesher and the pledge by County Attorney Reingold. Everybody please stand for a moment of silent reflection.
In Jesus' name we pray. Dear Lord, today we are gathered here to do the county's work, and we ask you for your blessing. We also are thankful that all who have congregated today are here and attending to help us with the county's business. We ask you to bless them all and bless all of the men and women who serve this great nation and our first responders who ensure our safety each and every day. We ask you for your patience, your guidance, and your understanding as we get through these decisions today. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please face the flag. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's okay. Good work. All right. Gentlemen, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Flesher and a second by Commissioner Solari. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is approval of the minutes of October 22nd.
Madam Chair, move approval.
I have a motion by Commissioner Flesher, a second by Commissioner Zork. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. There is one informational item, which is the first quarter 2020 preliminary budget report for everybody's information. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Would anybody like to pull anything from consent? Anybody from the public wishing to pull anything from the consent agenda? Seeing none,
Madam Chair, move approval as it stands.
I have a motion by Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Zork. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with Commissioner O'Brien absent. The next item we'll move on to is a public hearing. This is a request by Mandela Village, LLC, to rezone plus or minus 79.1 acres from A1 Agriculture 1 and RS3 Residential Single Family to PDTND, Planned Development Traditional Neighborhood Design, and to obtain conceptual PD approval for a project to be known as Mandela Village for property located at the northwest corner of the 58th Avenue and 53rd Street intersection. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding, and the parties to the proceeding are Indian River County and Mandela Village, LLC. Commissioners, at this time, I'm going to ask you to disclose any ex parte communication, site visits, or independent investigations. Commissioner Zork?
Yes, Madam Chair. Over the last number of years, I've spoken with a number of people on this project, as well as the developers of Providence Point on the other side of the street. So first time seeing the official plan today, other than what was in our agenda packet. That was just general, high-level conversations on concept and how it affects the 58th Avenue and 53rd Street roadway plan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Fleischer?
Madam Chair, none that I'm aware of, but I just would like to take this opportunity to say thank you to all of the individuals who have sent emails, correspondence, phone calls. They're all in the office. As you know, this is a quasi-judicial hearing, and my response would have to be in this room, not one-to-one ex parte prior to. It must be on camera. So I want to thank everyone for their open line of communication that could not be fully open. So, but no, Madam Chair.
Okay. I do travel this general area back and forth, so I'm familiar with the site, but have not made any direct site visits. Yes?
I should add that I do live in the city of Sebastian and pass that area each and every day on the way to work.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Solari?
Thank you. I too have passed the area, but aside from that, I have also gotten about 30 to 40 emails from different people expressing their opinion about the project. I've asked Richard upstairs to make them copies available to the clerk. Other than that, I've had no conversations with anybody about the project.
Okay. And then can the commissioners confirm that you have an open mind and are able to base your decision on evidence presented and applicable law?
Have and will?
I can and will.
Can and will?
Can and will.
Wonderful. And at this time, we'll open the public hearing. If I could ask the clerk to swear in anybody that's going to be speaking on this item, whether it's from the public or staff or any other person that may want to come up and comment, I need you to stand and be sworn in. All right.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll move on to a presentation by county staff.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. For the record, I am Ryan Sweeney, Senior Planner with the County Community Development Department. This morning we have a proposal for a PD rezoning and conceptual PD plan approval for a project to be known as Mandela Village Plan Development. A brief slide to review the plan development rezoning process. The first step is the PD rezoning and conceptual PD plan approval process, which requires a Planning and Zoning Commission hearing, which has already occurred, and today the board's ultimate decision on the first step. The second step is a preliminary PD plan plat approval for each phase of the project, and then that's at the Planning and Zoning Commission level. And then there is a land development permit or waiver reviewed and approved by staff. And lastly, the final step is the final PD plan plat approved by the board for each phase. The project site is located at the northwest corner of 58th Avenue and 53rd Street and is bound by the North Relief Canal on the north side. Here's an aerial depicting the existing conditions of the project site. It's basically a former grove site, and again, North Relief Canal to the north, 58th Avenue to the east, and 53rd Street to the south. I'm also providing an overall aerial showing the surrounding area. Immediately east is the Cove at Waterway Village, and then the remainder of the Waterway Village project. To the northeast is Vero Lago. There's a Pine Ridge subdivision, a Pine Ridge Club to the north, and then some large acreage to the north and west. And to the south is the Providence Point PD T&D site south of 53rd Street. The proposed development is roughly 79 acres after right-of-way dedication. It is designed to meet the traditional neighborhood design criteria outlined in the comprehensive plan and the land development regulations. It proposes a total of 88 single-family units, 111 multifamily units, a resort-style hotel, a limited commercial area, a lakeside amphitheater, and a number of open space common areas and a clubhouse recreation areas. Here is the conceptual PD plan showing the general layout of the overall project with the hotel and commercial area oriented towards 53rd Street and 58th Avenue. Then there's a community use area and several multifamily condo buildings, some additional multifamily condo and triplex buildings, the small single-family cottage lots, and then ultimately the estate lots on the west end of the project. Through the PD rezoning process and through the PD process, the project is seeking a number of waivers from standard development standards, and we've provided a table in your staff report and here on this slide comparing the proposal to the RS3 and A1 underlying zoning districts. There also, it should be noted that all of the multifamily and commercial buildings will be controlled by individual PD or site plans for those areas. The traffic circulation plan proposes a grid layout throughout the project and includes a total of 4 driveway connections to 53rd Street. The primary driveway connection is a full movement driveway that lines up with the Providence Point driveway on the south side. That doesn't exist, but would align with that driveway connection. There's also a limited right-in, right-out that serves the commercial area. A one-way exit only for essentially for the residential area to get onto 53rd Street. And then lastly, a stabilized emergency access at the far west end of the project. That would normally be gated but available for emergency vehicles. There are a number of dedications, improvements, and conditions that are required through the review process, including a significant amount of right-of-way dedication for 53rd Street, road paving for 53rd Street, turn lane improvements for 53rd Street, and drainage to accommodate the widening of 53rd Street. There's also a sidewalk along the entire length of 53rd Street frontage, right-of-way dedication for 58th Avenue, a 58th Avenue sidewalk, an internal pedestrian system throughout the project, street lighting throughout the project, green space and recreation areas. Also, it should be noted that there is a bald eagle's nest on the Providence Point project side, south of 53rd Street. There's not much implications on this particular project except for limited construction hours during season, but it's a very small portion that covers this project. And all of the, or not all, but a majority of these improvements and conditions, there's an option to further define or outline the timing and a mechanism through a developer's agreement that would be possibly proposed in the future. The landscape and buffering plan or compatibility plan provides a 50-foot type A buffer along the west and a portion of the north project perimeter where those project sites are located outside of the urban service area. The remainder of the project requires a 25-foot wide type B buffer along all other portions of the project. There's also, there's a number of internal landscape requirements, including littoral zones and street trees, and those will be further defined in the preliminary PD plans as the project, if the project moves forward. The public benefits and T&D criteria outlined, so through the PD process, plan developments are required to provide public benefits that are over and above a typical conventional subdivision. The largest public benefit is the significant amount of right-of-way dedication the project is proposing for 53rd Street. Also agreeing to handle the stormwater drainage runoff for the 53rd Street improvements. There is public access to the commercial and hotel portions and also limited public access during public events at the Lakeside Amphitheater. And as mentioned before, and probably 3 pages of your staff report, the traditional neighborhood design criteria, there's an extensive number of criteria that the project must meet in order to meet the T&D design. And we've outlined how the project satisfies those criteria, which are outlined in the comprehensive plan and the land development regulations. The Planning and Zoning Commission on December 12th of 2019 voted 5-1 to recommend that the board approve the PD rezoning and the conceptual PD plan with staff recommended conditions. There was a brief discussion concerning the hotel component of the overall project. I suspect there will probably be a discussion today as well. And ultimately, the applicant has agreed to all recommended conditions. And with that, staff's recommendation is that the board approve the planning, the PD rezoning and conceptual PD plan for Mandela Village with the conditions listed in staff's report, including 53rd Street design and required improvements, 53rd Street and 58th Avenue right-of-way dedications, 53rd Street and 58th Avenue sidewalks, drainage for 53rd Street, the final design and location of the transit stop, which will be located along 58th Avenue, final landscape street lighting and tree protection mitigation plans, which are outlined through the preliminary PD plan process, and the option for a developer's agreement for a number of the required dedications and improvements. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions for county staff at this time?
Madam Chair, I noticed on the overhead, there's an activity area, and there's also a recreation area. Was that delineated, further discussed, other than just labels?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Fleischer, yeah, I mean, those are general labels, but that's more the applicant trying to outline certain areas of focus. But there are criteria that, in the T&D criteria, that require certain, what they call loci of function, which is basically clustered activity areas. And then there's lower activity areas in sort of the estate lot area. But yeah, it's a function of labels.
And the balance of the setbacks on 53rd are consistent with the current setbacks of existing development?
Well, they're greater. They're far
They're
greater.
greater?
Yes.
Greater than 25?
Greater, yes. Madam Chair, Commissioner Fleischer, yeah, the perimeter alone is the 25, and then through the design, there we go. Actually, this might be a better slide. They provide parking and roadways and other things to buffer, and then along 58th Avenue, you have your stormwater. They're before you're at your first hard improvement, that's probably approximately 300 feet, and then your first structure is about 400 feet from 58th Avenue.
And outside of the proposed hotel area, where the parking, is that lot adjacent to it?
Sure, Madam Chair, Commissioner Fleischer, by and large, the parking for the hotel is on the north side.
Right.
The parking on the south side would support the neighborhood commercial area.
So the parking is separated for the proposed hotel?
Correct. I mean, well, to the extent that the whole project is interconnected, but yes, there is a separate designated area for the hotel.
And then they have a sports area?
Correct. And that would be accessible. My understanding is that sports area would be accessible to residents as well. It's not limited to the hotel guests.
For example, like tennis and pickleball?
Exactly. Yeah, tennis and pickleball. That's basically what you're looking at is tennis and pickleball.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Solari, I believe you had a question?
Thank you. Yes. Rough estimate of how much land the hotel and commercial area takes up as opposed to the, I'll call the residential areas and amenities?
Commissioner Solari, the total limit is 10%. I want to say it's at 8.5 total combined with the neighborhood commercial and the hotel. But the T&D criteria limit the total project to 10.
So it's no more than 10%.
Right.
Thank you.
Commissioner Zork?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. On the, I don't know which slide you'd have to go back to, where it showed kind of the cutout for the 53rd Street right-of-way dedication from the project, and I'm trying to match that up with, right, okay, that one. So that looks like that goes about a third back in.
Let me clarify, Madam
Okay.
Chair, Commissioner Zork. The parcel farthest to the east, they actually acquired from the Providence Point folks to the south, so they did their dedication when they did the real estate transaction.
Okay.
So that same line would continue the remainder of the 2/3 of the project.
Okay.
So that is it's a 120 feet of right-of-way.
Okay, I understand. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And then my question is, what's the definition of a resort hotel? Is that something different than regular hotel?
Madam Chair, it's a terminology that they're using. It's more amenities.
Okay, all right.
Sounds nice.
Are there any other questions for staff?
Resort, it's a lake.
No? All right, then at this time, we'll have a presentation by Mandela Village. Welcome.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I'm Richard Bialowski, one of the managers of Mandela Village and architect of the project. I appreciate that there are a lot of people here today because of this project, and I'm actually happy to see this. It's much better to have people involved in the planning process in a community than to have things just happen and find out later. But I certainly hope that everyone will keep an open mind as you look at this presentation, because there's been an awful lot of serious thinking that's gone into this development, and I think it is something different from what you usually see. You know, what you usually see is what you see over and over and over. And back in 2008, when the T&D ordinance was enacted, the language said, oftentimes new single-family subdivisions exhibit a monotony or lack of variation in residential architecture. And it went on to elaborate on that. It's interesting, they didn't talk about site plan monotony, but you know, most site plans you see, there's a lake with houses around it, and it's hard to distinguish one development from the other, which is what the T&D ordinance was all about, creating some things unique, being able to kind of break the box of the same old, same old. There's a saying that says, if about sense of place, that if you don't know where you are, you don't know who you are. And this is a serious attempt to create a place. And, you know, T&Ds, the whole T&D concept, it's part of new urbanism. David and I always like to joke that there are two serious problems with new urbanism in Indian River County, new and urban. But that being said, this is not your typical celebration seaside new urbanist project. It's in some ways it's like a college campus, and I say that because college campuses separate pedestrian traffic from vehicular traffic. They have formal gathering spaces. They have nature spaces. They encourage walking, and that's what we've tried to do. So my cursor kind of shows up. I'll walk you through this. Obviously 58th and 53rd. At this corner, we have a small commercial center. We have about a 6,500 square foot grocery store. I think a lot of us remember the days of the mom and pop corner store. This is to serve the people in this community and the nearby catchment. You know, you should be able to, walk here, take your bicycle, take a golf cart, and for the neighbors, it's a place to come and gather. You'll see when I go through the visuals that this little shopping center is as much a gathering space as it is a shopping space. And someone asked the question about different kinds of open space. You know, there are statistics about how much open space you have to provide, but when you often look at that open space, it's just some kind of green thing around the edge of a lake. You might walk by it, you might drive by it, but nobody really uses it as open space. And the new urbanist definition of usable open space, or what they call gathering space, is space that's surrounded, defined on three sides, so people feel inclined to use it. And we have a combination of gathering spaces and nature amenities in this plan. So as you look, you see park, a little park here, park. Every one of these small cottages has a park. There are in the single family area back here, there are four corner parks, another park. Everything, instead of being oriented around a lake, everything is oriented around these parks. So you're encouraged to walk because, you know, each of these parks has a different theme, a different place to meet people. There's about a 1.5 mile trail around this lake, which is open to the public. It isn't listed as one of our public benefits. I think it should be, because if you come to this shopping center, and you'll see in the visuals, you can take this trail, which will be a parcours around the lake. We have. Let me start the slides here, and then I can speak of some of these amenities as we go. The entrance to the project. I'll be quiet here, and this is about 1.5 minutes of video. I apologize. I was supposed to get an update this morning. I didn't. You'll notice there is a tree that's 2 feet off the ground. That is not part of our proposal. Mm-hmm. Here we go. think this speaks for itself. It moves too fast to really narrate, but that is the hotel on the right. You're going to see in a minute, you see the pickleball tennis. There's a 3/4 acre sand bottom swimming lagoon, as well as a swimming pool for the hotel. This is the commercial center. You see there's room for gathering, there's room for farmers markets and other public events. That's our wellness center, condominiums. You can see all these different park spaces as we go through here. This is the small cottages. I'll explain each of these sections in a moment. There's a small performance amphitheater for slightly amplified acoustic concerts, not heavy metal rock concerts, in case anyone's worried about that. This is the community center and pool, exercise facility, place to have for people to have a party. Solar carports, place for yoga, meditation, exercise. And that's the overview. The pieces of this as we go. All right. So again, there's an emphasis on walkability with parks and trails, formal, informal, and informal gathering spaces and nature amenities. It's not on our list of public benefit, but we have predominantly native Florida landscaping. We have some fabulous landscape architects. You will see the landscape plan when we come back for preliminary approval. But that landscape plan will include a best management practices document that will go into the homeowners association documents. Everything will be drought tolerant. Initially, there'll be irrigation. In the long run, with native plants, there'll be minimal irrigation and minimal need for any fertilizers, which in the BMPs will be called out to only be organic, as well as natural pest control. We know that works. I do that personally at my home. This native Florida landscaping, it's not a gimmick. It's a really serious thing that we're doing. I was kind of thinking Dr. Baker might be here today, but I was inspired by his conference 2 years ago that the really serious importance of doing this. He's having, on this Saturday, they're having their third conference. It's for owners associations to learn something, and this potential owners association really did learn something from that. There's an emphasis on wellness in this community. We have a holistic health spa clinic that'll be based on natural health care. It's in conjunction with the hotel. People will come into the hotel who come to participate in this wellness clinic, it's really a very passive thing. This is not, people come to be quiet and go through the cures. If this was Europe, it would be a very common thing to do. And then we are having a little debate right now between net zero ready and net zero, which would mean we would not be using more power than we generate. I'm pretty confident that when we start putting roofs on homes here in 18 months or something like that, the cost of the technology is going to be even less. It's come down so substantially in recent times. We have used solar thermal air conditioning before. We build a very, very highly insulated home, so they'll be very energy efficient. We will have electric car stations, charging stations. We're looking to future-proof this project. Electric cars are certainly part of the future, and if you don't provide for that in the home design and the multifamily design, there's an issue that a lot of people are going to have to face. And then in terms of resilient design considerations, this is the first inland resort in Indian River County, and I think, without saying too much about beachfront resorts, I think in the long term there'll be some wisdom in doing that. And that hotel has these amenities of tennis, pickleball, pool, the swimming lagoon, the walking trail, the health and wellness center. So let me walk through some of the areas of the project directly. This is the Market Square. You can see it's a waterfront square, so there are many places to sit and gather, talk, have small concerts, maybe some musicians, just wandering around a farmer's market. Another view of the small shopping center. This is the hotel. I'm guessing that a lot of people are here today because they're concerned about having a hotel. I remind all of you that Providence Point, immediately to the south of us, not only had a hotel, and I think that project still has life. I've been told that it has by the developer. Not only did it have a hotel, but it was basically not short-term, but a seasonal rental program. So almost all the homes in the development are essentially part of the hotel. Let me go back one. So this, you see with the hotel, this is the swimming lagoon, which is a 3/4 acre sand bottom swimming lagoon. And you'll see in detail in a minute, we're quite a ways back from the street. Part of that is, as you know, there are power lines along 58th, and because part of our wellness consideration is healthy housing, which David Ederer, my partner, and I have been specialists in for many years. One of those considerations is electromagnetic field pollution. And the fields from these power lines are actually pretty high. So we worked with a special consultant to determine where the safe sleeping line was. So that was part of our consideration of where the hotel is located. This is kind of consistent with local architectural style. There's nothing gymnastic or about it architecturally. But on the waterfront side, it's meant to be like one of those old resort hotels with a large veranda with rocking chairs facing the water. And you can see the swimming lagoon there. I wanted to show this because, again, I know there are concerns about the hotel. I think almost everyone knows where the Spring Hill Suites is. And the Spring Hill Suites is you barely see it from the road. It's very innocuous. And just to give you an idea of location, Spring Hill from Indian River Boulevard is 330 feet back. From this point, from the driveway, 301. You see, we're more than half again as far from the road at a direct shot. From the corner where you really would drive up and see this, we're over twice the distance of from the road as Spring Hill. So kind of keep that in mind when you think about the visual impacts. The hotel is an integral part of this development. For one thing, I did a calculation of how many. I have a big house and I have a lot of guest rooms, and I have a lot of guests, and I love my guests. But we all live in Florida. This is winter. We all have a lot of guests. It gets old sometimes. So I did a little calculation about how many hotel nights I could personally pay for and save having some guest rooms. And I think that, that sounds silly, but I think there's a reality to it, being able to have something in the neighborhood. The hotel provides amenities. I mean, we could not have the pickleball, tennis, swimming lagoon without the hotel. And some of just the nature trails and some of those things, it gives us a little better economic basis to provide amenities, and it's another gathering point for the hotel. I have a very good friend, a very well-known architect in California, who was designing a hotel in a neighborhood, and there was a lot of opposition to it. And they did a study of 3 other hotels that were also similarly located in neighborhoods. What they found was that there was the value increased within walking distance of the hotel, the value of the homes, because people ultimately viewed that hotel as a neighborhood amenity. And I think there's a reality to that. The Village Hall and Performance Green. Village Hall is kind of a typical community center with a place for people to gather, watch a ball game together, have a party if they don't have enough room in their home, have a little exercise facility. The Performance Amphitheater is a public amenity, and the intention again is to have quiet, tame concerts, or plays or anything like that. It's a unique and unusual amenity in a development here, but it's part of what makes this place unique. That's what it looks like. This is the Village Community Center. Town Center and multifamily. We tried, most of the subdivisions here are demographically monolithic. Pretty much the same price point with some variation, pretty much the same square footage with some variation, pretty much the same economic demographic of the buyers. We call this a village, and we tried to create a village by having different types of housing opportunities to get a variety of people, because we just think, really, basically, that's more interesting than living in the typical subdivision. And so here we have a building that has some 16, is it 16 or 18? I'm sorry, I don't exactly remember. Small apartments over some office space. This is the wellness center, holistic wellness center. There's a facility here that's really kind of related to the community center that's for yoga, exercise, meditation. These 4 buildings are condominiums. These are townhomes. So this is the yoga and meditation building. Here's the meditation secret garden. This is the wellness center, holistic health wellness center. These are our condominiums. The apartments over offices. And then we have this section of 32 small cottages. It's interesting to us how much interest there is in this product. Some high percentage of the households in the United States are 1- and 2-person households, but the common building type is, other than multifamily, is still 3 bedrooms, 2 baths as the minimum. These homes, some of them are as small as 850 square feet. Some of them go up to 1,350 square feet. I think the 2 bedrooms in the back here may approach 1,500. But these are detached homes, but clustered around courtyards with 4 homes clustered around a courtyard. We haven't addressed these in our landscape plan yet, but some may be vegetable gardens, some may be pergolas with patios and furniture. Different experiences that might draw people to walk through the project. You can see there's a direct spine. I'd have to go back to show you a walking spine that goes from here all the way to the commercial center. These are the townhomes, low key, and these are the small courtyard cottages. Again, small detached homes, kind of harking back to the 20s and 30s in our communities. And then the single-family home section, which has not been delineated in the 3D yet, but what you see here are park, and then walkways. So you can go from here to here without, there are sidewalks, but you can take these mid-block walking paths and really walk anywhere in this development. And these are some of the single-family homes. And that is the walkthrough of the project. I have our civil engineers from Dave Knight and Scott Murphy from Knight McGuire, my partner David Ederer here. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have. And thank you for allowing me to make this presentation.
Thank you. Commissioners, is there any questions for the applicant? Yes, Commissioner Solari.
Thank you. I've just got one. In terms of what opens first, are the residential units going to be there before the commercial and hotel, or will the hotel and commercial areas be there before the residences?
Commissioner Solari, it's a challenging question to answer. Of course, in the perfect world, all the houses would be built at once and sold at once, but it doesn't usually work that way. I wish I could answer that question. The intention is to do as much, initially as possible. There's every possibility the hotel could come first, because it's a chicken or the egg thing. The hotel is an attractor for the residents. But there could be other considerations.
Let me reword it then to
try
to make it a little more level.
Yeah.
Will lots be available for people to build on, but at the same time the commercial area is able to be built on?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Absolutely. No, I'm good.
Commissioner Fleischer? I had a few questions.
Mm-hmm.
On the townhomes and cottages slide, it was unclear where the parking would be for those homes. Is it just on-street parking?
No, there are parking pockets, there are parking areas with, each unit has a garage, plus, now there are some of the parking is on-street parking, but, Ryan, can you put that up? So for instance, here is I think this is a 4 and a 5 unit garage, and there's a short walking distance. There's a little drawing I have with a vector showing which garage goes where. Some of the second spaces are on the street. Knowing that these are very small units, it'll be interesting to see, if these are all 2-car families. I expect a number of these from just the people who've shown interest to be single-person households. But same with the townhomes, all have 1-car garage for everything, and then parking on the street for the second space. This parking thing is an interesting discussion because I don't know how far away we are from driverless cars, and we never talk about it in public forums or planning circles. But they say that driverless cars are going to liberate an area of parking in the United States that's equal in size to the state of Rhode Island. That's significant. So, when you start thinking in terms of future-proofing things, you start scratching your head in a lot of ways. But everybody has their own garage space in this. In the multifamily, everyone has a carport space.
Okay. So I'll ask you the same question I asked staff. What does resort-style hotel mean versus a regular hotel? What's the designation resort-style hotel indicate?
I wouldn't think that's a planning distinction. I would think that was more a marketing orientation, but maybe staff has a different answer.
I just didn't know if that meant it entailed something different than like the Spring Hill Suites.
Well, Spring Hills, we have amenities that they don't have. We have tennis, we have the pickleball. When we started this, I didn't even know what pickleball was. Somehow, now I have friends who are injured playing pickleball, so it's come a long way. So we have tennis, we have pickleball. Because we're not on the beach, and because the beach is a big draw, we have this 3/4 acre, well, along with the swimming pool, a 3/4 acre sand bottom clear swimming lake. And then we have this amenity of all these walking trails. So, Disney, I believe, is the only oceanfront resort with tennis. I could be wrong. And so, we have certain things. Spring Hill, it's a nice hotel. I don't want to say anything bad about the Spring Hill Suites, but, it's really a transient hotel for visitors. We will have some extended stay rooms in this hotel, probably about 25% extended stay. But the distinction, I think, is the amenities that we provide.
Okay. And then I've heard in the presentation this project referred to as a subdivision of sorts or a neighborhood, and then also as a resort. So is it a combination of both? I just am trying to understand the concept of what you're proposing.
Is that your question, Ryan, or mine?
I'll take a stab at it. Madam Chair, there is a mixture of, well, the technical term subdivision is just fee simple lots or, ownership, but whether that's, true year-round residence, seasonal, that I'd have to defer back to the developer.
Are you intending this to be a mixture of home ownership and short-term or longer seasonal rentals?
This is meant to be
or
home ownership with the exception of the 16 apartment units over the office building at the entry. Short-term, you never know. There are 3 people who live on my block year-round, so.
And then there's no entrance off of 58th?
No.
Okay. And off of 53rd, there was one main entrance and then an exit and then an emergency entrance?
Sure, Madam Chair. The very first one's a right in, right out, then a main, and then an exit only, emergency at the end. So there's 4 total.
Okay. All right, that's all I have for now. Anybody else? Yes. Mm-hmm.
For Rich, when we're looking at this conceptual hotel, resort hotel.
Mhm.
Does it have a brand? I don't want to know the brand.
Yes. Well, I mean, we're in negotiations, and I wouldn't be comfortable saying what that brand was, but it's,
That's what I didn't ask.
yeah, yes. But the answer is yes.
So if we did have a brand, that brand is in the business for profit.
Hmm.
And you're suggesting that this resort hotel brings amenities to the rest of the public by its existence, but yet if it has a brand, they'll be concerned or focused in on profit and occupancy. I mean, that's
Mhm.
the two
Of course.
tenets of a hotel. You want to
Mm-hmm.
have your guests comfortable, but you want a full house.
Mm-hmm.
And in your presentation, I heard it was, and yes, we can all understand, around the holidays and when it's colder up north, we tend to have more guests down here. That's how I got here.
Mm-hmm.
But such being the case, it would then, if that was the premise of having the resort there, then it would be for overflow. So it would be a seasonal
Well,
building. I'm just trying to
Well, you
figure
know,
out
if-
why would a brand want to be there if it was a stepping stone, an overflow?
it's not an
Right.
overflow. In fact, if you want to attract people, what you need to do is make something that's attractive.
Yes.
And I think that's what we've done here. We would like this to be a legitimate choice for someone coming to the area to say, that's more attractive to me than something on the beach. I mean, that's part of it. So I can't say what flag we're talking to, but what I can say is the reason to be of this particular flag is having your own unique soul. A lot of these Spring Hill, Hampton, they're very formulaic. You follow their pattern, you do what they say, you provide what they want. This particular flag, even though it's part of a major organization, the essence of who they are is we want you to be unique and have your own soul. That's what we are completely. So, I think we'll attract people, and I think we'll compete with the other resorts because we're offering a quiet, peaceful environment with you can walk to the little store and get something to eat. You can walk around the community. You can play a few things, swim in a pool, but we're creating the garden atmosphere of the entire project is a unique attractor. We're an oceanfront community, so we think in terms of oceanfront resorts. Well, the entire middle of Florida is a resort with hotels, and they don't have an ocean. So we're not concerned about that. We think we will attract people. It's not a transient hotel. It's not somebody driving through Vero Beach. It's somebody who comes to stay in a particular resort. And we would also have it's a small hotel, but we would also have some conferences. Particularly, we're attractive because of the emphasis on healthy housing, healthy building practices, low electromagnetic fields, non-toxic materials. We've already had a few groups, health-oriented groups, say, gee, that would be the ideal place for us to have a conference, because other people don't. David and I have done this non-toxic building for a long time. Other people don't even know it exists, and they always say most developers market by looking in the rear view mirror, and we're trying to be forward-looking here in everything we're doing.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioners, any other questions?
Not at this time.
All right, then at this point, I'll ask for any input from the public.
And can I reserve the right to respond to any of that afterward?
There'll be time for a final presentation at the
Great.
end.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So
Chairman.
anybody from the public wishing to, I'm sorry.
No, yes, right before that, Chairman Adams, I know there were a number of people kind of cycled in after we did the swearing in. I just didn't know if there was anyone who came in since we sworn in who was not sworn in, who would like to be sworn in before they make their presentation.
So if you are going to speak on this item, go ahead and stand up, and we'll ask the clerk to swear in those that were not sworn in earlier. So please stand and raise your...
Turn the mic on. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Reingold. At this time, we'll take input from the public. Anybody from the public wishing to speak on this item, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. We do have 2 podiums, so you can go ahead and line up on either side, and we'll go back and forth. But whoever wants to be first, don't be shy. Come on up and state your name and address for the record.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for your time. I'd like to address this topic. My name is Michael Cosgrove, and I live at 5365 Dominica Street in the Isles of Waterway Village. I've been a resident of Vero Beach for 5 years, after living in the New York metropolitan area for most of my life. My wife and I love Vero Beach. We hope to live the balance of our lifetime here in Vero Beach. What attracted us to Vero Beach? The quality of life and the cost of living. Vero Beach has a beautiful beach town, great stores, golf courses, theater, museum, cultural events, and amenities, as well as restaurants and a growing downtown area as well. There is a great balance between commercial and residential areas. I stress balance. Is there a need to develop stores, a hotel, and an entertainment value in the middle of a residential area? I say no. Will this development increase the value of our existing homes? I say no. Is there not enough existing commercial space and available land within the existing commercial zone to develop? I say yes. I'm not a professional here. I'm just my observation. Are Macy's, Sears, and many other stores which exist in Vero Beach going out of business or downsizing around the country? Yes. Could a developer repurpose those existing commercial properties? Yes. I'm sure a developer could buy many of those properties for fractions on the dollar, and those corporations would be thrilled. For the life of me, I can't see a reason to develop a commercial space in a residential area and disrupt the quality of life of so many residents. And that's noise, the amphitheater, traffic, and the grocery store, litter. Commercial properties such as hotels and stores will add noise and litter to our neighborhood. Have you seen 49th Street and 53rd Street? Litter on one side and cement and gravel on the other side. And our streets are rarely or if ever cleaned. I moved to Vero Beach because it wasn't congested like South Florida. I understand we are growing. I am comfortable with the growth if it is done thoughtfully. This situation is poorly thought out. The investors make money and leave, and the residents get stuck with a bad situation. Have the residents asked for this venue? Is the county or residents getting something in return for this development? Do any of the commissioners, and you've answered this already, but I'll state it anyway, do any of the commissioners, their relatives, friends, or associates have an interest, or are they being enriched? I think you've answered that, but I just... 3 of the 5 commissioners are from areas outside Vero Beach, Fort Lauderdale, and New York, to name 2, and I believe one of the commissioners also originated from Chicago. Recently, I traveled to Fort Lauderdale to visit a friend. It reminded me of Queens, New York. Is the reason you moved to Vero Beach because it reminds you of Queens, New York, or Fort Lauderdale? And I think a couple of you know who I'm talking about.
Sir, if I can.
Yes.
I don't, This is your opportunity to present your facts
Okay.
for your side. Making attacks on the commissioners
Okay.
is not helpful for your case whatsoever.
Okay, it's not an
And-
attack. I'm making a point.
Okay,
I don't want it viewed as a
you made an attack
I'm
on.
trying to sort of sympathize.
Sir, let's just get to that point
Okay.
so we can move on, because there's a lot of people that would like to provide input as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I became aware of this rezoning 5 days ago via a Facebook post. I in turn posted the information on Nextdoor. In 4 days, we received 79 responses, 1 in favor, 78 against. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sir, please state your name. There will be no clapping for either side, okay? Everybody's here to present their side and their facts, and we're going to have a well-organized public hearing at this point. So I will ask you to refrain from clapping. Sir, your turn. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Timothy Ball, B-A-L-L. I'm a resident of the Cove. My address is 5423 Antigua Circle, Vero Beach. That's the corner of 58th Avenue and 53rd Street. I have been part of our architectural review committee at the Cove for the past 3 years. I've been the chairman of the ARC for the past year. So I am concerned about our Cove community specifically and the community in general. And the aspect of this change for this proposal is concerning me with regard to the commercial aspect, the community traffic, and I would argue that the property values would be diminished, and the aspect of rental property is different than anything that exists currently in our area. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Sir, name and address for the record.
My name's Thomas P. Davis, 5830 Magnolia Lane, Vero Beach. I'd like to call everyone's attention to the plaque at the front of this room. In the center of the plaque is citrus fruit. And as we increasingly remove the farm land and the citrus groves, some of this has to be obliterated. So every time land is taken away from agricultural, a little bit of this plaque is obliterated. When will we have to change and remove the citrus fruit from the center of that plaque? I don't know, but we are inexorably heading in that direction. On a macro level, are developments like this taking into consideration the infrastructure of the county, the sewage, the ability to handle excess sewage, supply water to the developments, and are the roads going to be able to handle this development? Each little bit adds to that burden, and that needs to be taken into consideration. If we wanted to live in a place like Miami or Fort Lauderdale, we could move there, but we didn't want to do that. We wanted to live in Indian River County, and it's changing, and you are contributing to that change if projects such as this are approved. The gentleman who presented for the development mentioned the health benefits of having a spa and exercise equipment. Well, I would call your attention to the fact that the incidence of coronary artery disease has paralleled the increase in such sites. We're becoming more obese, there's getting to be more coronary artery disease, and developments like this are not going to change that. So I hope you'll take these things into consideration in your judgment. Thank you very much.
May I respond to a couple things? First, as somebody in Citrus, or used to be in Citrus, you can't blame a develop like this for the removal of citrus in this county. It's insects, diseases, and the market which has driven citrus to the place it is today. So I find it troublesome when people blame other members of our community for things which they have nothing to do with. More importantly, you and others are mentioning this very high density, and you said, like Miami or Fort Lauderdale. The density in Miami and Fort Lauderdale is 200 to 300 units per acre. This project itself is ultra low density of roughly 5 units per acre. So I find it incendiary and absolutely not anything near the truth to compare the two. We've been very balanced at this commission to make sure that we don't have anything more than what would be low density, and this does not change that at all. Thank you.
Is it removing agricultural use? Is it removing open space? Is it removing habitat for animals? Yes, it is.
So what you're saying then is that we should have no more development in this community?
No, I'm not saying that.
Well, then any development like that is going to do that. And this is doing it apparently not only in accord with our present code, but it seems to me so far in a responsible manner.
That's a matter of...
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. Sir, please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Ken Bradley. I apologize, I have bronchitis. I might cough. Ken Bradley, I live at 5238 Turtle Creek Circle, Vero Beach, 32967. I wonder if it's possible to put up the 2030 Indian River County Future Land Use Plan. Is that possible? Do you have that?
Matt, I don't have that on.
We don't have
Okay,
that on this.
it's on the internet.
I can try.
Yep. It's on the site, on the Indian River County site.
While they're trying to do that, if you'd like to continue.
Yes. I would like us to take a look at that 2030. I object to the density, the hotel, the rental apartments and condos, the on-street parking. The subject property is located within the 2030 Indian River County future land urban service boundary line. Approval will push the USAB boundary 10 years or more before anticipated. There's more than enough undeveloped land outside the boundary with zoning that already allows higher density development. Until these higher density vacant infill parcels are developed outside the USAB lines, the urban service area boundary line should not be violated. Remember, this is 10 years in the future. That's the county came up with this. If there's a valid reason and need in Vero Beach for this type of development, I suggest rezoning the Indian River Mall or other infill parcels to allow a TND, not agricultural and low-density land that should not be developed for many years in the future. Development for the sake of development is not a good reason. Approval of this type of development is the first step in continuing to push the urban service boundary lines, and approval will also encourage other developers to make application to do the same. And soon we will have the uncontrolled urban sprawl that we see in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach. As a current single-family homeowner, registered voter, and taxpayer, I vehemently and completely oppose any rezoning of the subject parcel from agricultural to a TND, including the proposed single-family 88 units, 111 multifamily units, basically apartments and condos, a 100-room hotel, transient, and commercial. It's time to say no and hold the line until at least 2030 and until the infill higher density parcels in the county are completely developed. If not now, where will it stop? Do we really want to look like Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties with uncontrolled growth? Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Hello. My name's John McCallum. I live in Bed Pine, which is in the area to be affected. I've been here for 10 years. I came from Chicago, highly populated area. I ran a business there for 30 years, a little older than I look, maybe. When I used to visit my parents when they moved to Palm Beach County 30 years ago, it looked a lot like Indian River County in certain parts. You could fish for bass next to my father's house, and within a pretty short period of time, it looks like it does now. And I can see that is clearly happening to this county. It's happening specifically out on the land where I live, which one of the pleasures of it was to actually see a cow or a crane or another piece of wildlife walking around unfettered by commercial development. There's an awful lot of recently completed development on US 1 at 53rd Street. There's a Harbor Point Mall, which is underused. There is an incredible amount of commercially zoned land available along US 1 going north towards Sebastian. There are many places where commercial uses for things could be. I cannot imagine from my time here or my time in Chicago, which was considerable, or Los Angeles or New York, why anybody would stay at a resort hotel near my home in Bent Pine. It is completely unlikely and it's unfeasible. I also wonder who will it be that will police these plans to make sure that they actually come to fruition. We have a development in Bent Pine called the Preserve, which was highly contentious for about a decade. And it suffered through the financial collapse, the housing collapse, and sat there in what I call a graveyard community, which everyone's familiar with, that's been in Florida for more than maybe 15 years. You would see golf courses and failed communities with weeds growing out of the bunkers and sand traps, and it was just deplorable. And this is going to catch a lot of people out when there will inevitably be another real estate pullback, and a lot of these projects will fail, depending on how they're financed or how many people are interested in buying them. And I really think it would be pretty much of a disservice to everyone that has started moving out to these residential properties out near 53rd and 58th Street, of which there are many, and then have this unsightly project die in its tracks, and which is probably what will happen in the Preserve in Bent Pine. And it happened before in the Preserve in Bent Pine when it was stuck there in limbo for about a decade. So I think the county should maybe consider what will happen if they initiate too many projects that are commercial in nature, that aren't really, there's no demand for people that don't live in the community, that act like they know what is good for the community. And then it'll be something to think about if this bad scenario should come to pass. And I think it's pretty obvious it will. It's cyclical. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Bob Chapman. I live in Vero Lago at 4860 55th Street. And what else do I need? Is that good?
You're good.
Moved here 4 years ago from Palm Beach County, and my wife and I, we love it. I mean, we love it because there was elbow room, and it had all the restaurants and the things that we need on Route 60. And my wife jokingly said, "I wish we could close the gates, but we know growth is coming because of migration is north, and people are coming up the north. So there's going to be growth." I'm against this project. A hotel? I know hotels. We love to go hotels on the beach. That's our vacation. The hotel prices are out of control in the state of Florida, especially in the wintertime. We can't afford that vacation anymore. And if our kids came to visit, there's no way we could afford for them to stay in a hotel if our house was overcrowded. Basically, I'm saying a hotel is a bad idea, in my opinion. The second thing, I think it's a crime for any developer, and I think this gentleman mentioned one of these gentlemen mentioned the hotel, like it's a business. What are we doing putting a business in a residential area? But the second point I wanted to make was, it's a crime, in my opinion, for a developer to sell you a house with a one-car garage and a postage stamp driveway. I've seen a lot of that in Palm Beach County. You can get a Volkswagen on your driveway, and then when your kids come to visit, they have to park 2 miles away. I heard off-street parking. That's horrible for a developer to do that. Everybody has a family or friends, and they come to stay overnight, and there's no place to park. So I'm for development. I'm not really for development. I know it's going to happen, but do it properly. Don't be putting in one-car garages and one-car driveways. That's crazy. And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Did you want to make a comment?
Yes.
Okay. Please state your name and address for the record.
Joyce Davis, Bent Pine resident. I've been a resident since 2015. We own a home in Bent Pine, and we stayed in rented houses in Vero Beach for many years, so we know the area. I guess I don't know how many people in the developments around Bent Pine and around 58th and 53rd know that this is going to be an inland resort. I was sort of surprised about that, having a little Disney World right here. But anyway, more people might like to know about that. I object to the 100-room hotel, the size of the event that might be there. with the amphitheater having lights and probably some concerts there. It changes the area completely. There's a sports area for tennis and pickleball, and now I know there are pickleball conventions, and the presenter mentioned having conferences, so that's more traffic. So I'm concerned about the traffic, and I'm concerned that does everybody know the extent of the development? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Yes, ma'am, did you want to make some comments?
Hi, my name is Sarah Dornan, and I live at 5705 55th Street in Vero Lago. And I just found out about this on Saturday when someone posted this on Next Door Neighbors. And I believe like most of the people here just found out about this, and it's really disturbing. I feel like we haven't had enough time to prepare. And but the things that really do concern me are the quality of life. The hotel, I think, is just going to destroy the area. I mean, would you want one in your backyard? I wonder what the cost of the hotel room is going to be, the cost of the townhomes. I really disagree with the notion that the hotel is an attractor for residents. And could this area even support a 100-room hotel in a residential neighborhood? And how is it going to affect traffic and, again, quality of life? And I wish I had more time to prepare, and as others do, I suppose. Just maybe if we could even set this decision back so that we could come back and talk about it some more and find out more about it. I guess that's it, but thank you. Please, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir, welcome.
My name is Frank TeBerry. I live at 4966 Corsica Square in the Isles of Waterway. I just have a couple of questions for the developer. When he spoke about a small grocery store, are we looking at a Cumberland Farms or something with gas pumps, something of that nature? I also question, it sounds nice, but a sandy bottom swimming lagoon, how do they propose to keep it as such? I mean, with wildlife, et cetera, it sounds good on face value, but is it possible to do that? And thirdly, my question on one of the specifics that I saw up there, it says optional agreements for the developer. What are optional agreements for the developer? So those are my three questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Morning, Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Joseph Paladin. I'm president of Black Swan Consulting and Entitlement. I also am speaking today as a board member of the Indian River Neighborhood Association. This presentation was, in honesty, was brought to us a month or so ago by the developer, and we viewed the whole presentation and made comments. And as a member of the RNA, we sort of have a saying about growth. We like to control growth through quality, not quantity. Now, let me make a couple comments on some of the comments that have been made. First of all, I support Commissioner Solari's comments. One of the businesses I've been in the past, I also owned my own packing house, and I was in the citrus business. The reason why we sold the packing house and closed down the citrus business wasn't because of growth, it was because of disease, greening, etc. That's what basically closed the businesses down. There was 100 and some packing houses at one time. When we sold ours, we were down to 32. Now I think it's in single digits in the area. So it gives you an idea of why the citrus industry is not blossoming. Now, getting back to this project, and as a member of the Indian River Neighborhood Association, everything that was presented to us showed that there was a lot of thought that went into this project. There's a lot of pluses, green space, amenities, things like that. Some of the comments we had at the board meeting when this presentation was done was mostly made by myself. I was questioning the financial end of it. I was questioning the profit end of it because I'm a businessman, I'm a numbers man. Other than that, everything they presented was a plus, way beyond the line that we drew that we would stand behind a project. So As a member of the IRNA and speaking to you today, we're in support of this project. There's some questions on some parts of this project, but as far as the quality and as far as the open space, as far as the amenities, as far as the type of building, the non-toxic materials, we're in support of all that. We think that's all pluses. As far as the parks, as far as the recreation, as far as the health center and the walking trails, all that really appealed to us in the presentation that was made to our group. So even though there were some things we had questions about, overall, majority, the answers were there and the support was there for this project. So as a member of the Indian River Neighborhood Association, I'm here to tell you that we're impressed with some of the things that Richard brought forward, and we're impressed with some of the things in this project that we haven't seen in other projects. And like the developer said, a lot of developments where also to disclose in all honesty, I've been a developer here in this town for 20-some years. And I come from South Florida. And this place will never be like South Florida, people. Put that out of your mind. When South Florida was developed, there was no urban service line. There was no level of service. None of the things that we have, and as the chairman of the Growth Awareness Committee here for 9 years, we passed rules and regulations here in this county where this county will never be like South Florida. It would be impossible. It would be impossible to do even if we wanted to do it. It's not going to happen. Back in early 40 years ago or so when we were building in South Florida, if there's a piece of ground on a corner, you fit whatever building you could on that piece of ground. It didn't matter how many units you had or what the density was. It's whatever you could build. You can't do that here. You absolutely cannot do here. And with our county commission, not only this county commission, but the 5 county commissions I worked with before this, it ain't never going to happen. You got the height limitation, 35 feet, 3 stories maximum. It'll never go over that. Nobody could get that approved here. And that's because of the strong rules and regulations that the county commission has passed. So you can put that idea to rest. We won't have South Florida in River County. But I do think this is a good project. I think they put a lot of thought into this project. Maybe there's some things that we would like to change, but overall, we're in support of this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Madam Chair. Mr. Paladin, you commented on many of the amenities and a lot of the pluses, and you did say you had some concerns, and the organization had some concerns. Could you share them with us?
Yeah, the major concerns from the organization that came from our group basically came from me as a board member. And those questions, it's like one gentleman said, I'm always making sure when I do a project, as you know, I've done over 12 developments here in this county alone. And I've represented several more. All the projects are finished, complete, and were profitable. I was a numbers guy. I didn't know where the numbers were. The numbers weren't clear as to where the profitability was, as you brought up earlier in your conversation. So that was most of my negative comments on the project. I wanted to make sure this was profitable, make sure it's going to go forward, what the price point was, things like that. And a lot of that stuff is still in flux, where they're still working on that. And we don't try and control the market, but I was asking questions about the market to see where we were, to make sure when this starts, it gets finished. And it's like Commissioner Solari also asked about when's the residential units going to be done, when's the commercial property going to be done. Because as you know, different developments here in town have come in and said, well, okay, we're going to have this residential, we're going to have this amenity, we're going to have this. They build the houses and the amenities never get done. So that was one of the questions I agree with Commissioner Solari and the rest of you.
We have a few of those.
Pardon?
We have a few of those.
Yeah, we have a few of those. And that's why I agree with that question. Let's see what the plan is. And we have some rules and regulations where you have to build so many residential units before you build commercial or retail. But as a TND, you want to see that go together. And so, with our oversight, I think we need to stay on top of that to make sure that happens, and we don't just have residential, and we don't get the retail, and we don't get the walking trails and all that stuff. But they're very serious about doing that, and that's part of their amenity, and I think that's part of their price point that they plan on getting. Without these amenities, I don't think they'd be able to get the price point they're looking at. So overall, we're in support of this project.
Thank you.
Anything else?
All right, thank you. Yes, sir. Please state your name and address
Morning.
for the record.
My name is Richard Weghorn, 5701 Glen Eagle Lane, Vero Beach. And we moved here about 15 years ago. Incidentally, I sent an email to each one of you on the board last night, and maybe you had a chance to read it. We moved here 15 years ago, and we were surrounded by cows and horses and pigs, and everything was farmland, and it was just a delightful place. And I think things have changed naturally. And I'd like to also say that the Mandela presentation was well thought out and nicely presented. I also think that you all have a tough job. I've served on homeowners boards, and I know that you can't please everybody. But I think that I'd just like to ask a couple questions, if I may. And one of them is really who benefits, other than the boilerplate statement up there, who benefits from this project other than the developer? And secondly, has there been a strong public demand for this kind of a project in this particular place? And I think that the whole nature of the community, incidentally, I think 53rd Street has been a beautiful street and well designed and well landscaped and nicely contained. And I think this is just going to have a very strong impact on our house prices. I was wondering what the value of our current homes. I just wondered what the current prices of the houses that are projected might be. So those are about the three questions. I wondered whether I could get an answer from either the developer or the board.
Roland, do you have the answers to any of those questions? Or, I'm sorry, do you have?
Madam Chair, I think, well, to the extent that they're answerable, that I'd defer to the developer. I do have a few questions that the other gentleman asked that I'd like to weigh in on, but those are a little more subjective, if you will.
Okay.
No answers? Okay.
Well, no,
The developer's going to come back up.
At the end of this discussion, when the developer comes back, I trust, Madam Chair, for your indulgence, I would trust, I'm seeing a nod from the developer that he's indicating that he will address your question. The awkward moment is that this is public input time.
And then he has the opportunity to come back.
Then we don't want to start back and forth, but he's nodding his head that he's going to answer your question.
Okay. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Anybody else? No, thank you for that. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Janina Weghorn, and we didn't have time to discuss this with my husband. I'm 5701 Glen Eagle Lane. I have maybe three questions. One, you mentioned about gas station. The developer didn't mention anything about. Another question is if we have anything done to any roads, because I think the 58 road is already very busy road, and they're bringing so many houses and people, and traffic will develop. So I think should be two roads, enlarge this. And my question is also if developer is contributing to any way to infrastructure in Vero Beach. Like, I'm very concerned about this road, the railroad, that in case of emergency, sometimes you wait a long time to go through, and it's very dangerous if you need to get to hospital. We being cut, they should be built overpass. Now, another question is that I think the Vero Beach is choking right now at the season. There are many things like, for example, walk-in clinic, health problems if you have, excuse me, you waiting months or 2 or 3 to see a doctor. So the amount of people that are gonna be here gonna develop more problems that existing right now. You know, I was looking for, I needed walk-in cleaning with my kid, and I ran from one to one with several hours waiting. So the things is that we're missing many things this kind. And I think the developer should think about, providing any, besides of tennis courts and other things.
Okay.
If anything. Thank you very much.
All right. At this time, if it's okay with my fellow commissioners, I would like to take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back.
Maybe even a few minutes more.
Back to order. And we are on the input from the public section of our public hearing. If there's other people from the public wishing to have input on this item, please come to the podium. We have one on either side. State your name and address for the record. Yes, sir. Welcome.
Morning. Malcolm Sanderson, 5780 Magnolia in Bent Pine. And I know there's no way we can stop progress. Development is going to happen. The only request that I would have is keep the hotel and all that infrastructure out of there. Move it down to where the mall is. That place is going to be 10 cents on the dollar, and it's just falling apart. Pick it up, and let's put the major building there. 58th Avenue, I understand long-range planning for that is to keep it at 2 lanes, and you have decided that 66 is where you want to funnel all the traffic, but you're going to have an awful lot of traffic coming down 58. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Welcome.
Hi, my name is John Warren. I live at 4936 Corsica Square in the Isles at Waterway. I'm a retired CPA, so I'll make this real short. Okay, I understand that you people have a tough job, and I sympathize with you, but unfortunately, you're stuck with it. So going forward, I would just want to reiterate my position, my wife's position, and our neighbors' positions that we are not interested in any hotel, convention center, or resort at the corner of 53rd and 58th Avenue. We're not interested in it. We see no positive value to our property by getting this thing approved. I would ask you to really consider the hotel and the commercial venture side of this as being not part of any future going project. We are surrounded with residential homes to the north, to the south. That's all we have. And now, if this thing goes forward, we're going to have a change in the personality of the whole neighborhood. I see no positive value to our neighborhood and to our neighbors if this thing goes forward. The only positive neighborhood situation I can see with this would be the profits of the developer. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
Hi, my name's Jessica Franco. I'm here on behalf of my father. He lives in 6195 53rd Street, so right across the street from them. And we absolutely believe, I think this is a great idea. We need 53rd to, first of all, we would love to have more of a paved road. Also, I'm a realtor, and as a younger community, we be bringing more people in, especially the health industry or the health that it's going to create. In Vero Beach, me as a young person, I do real estate here, and I see a lot of course, older people, but we are intermingling with one another, and I believe this could create definitely more jobs when we're talking about the hotel. And focusing on my father's property, he does agriculture. He's a beekeeper. He has done that since he was 16 years old. This is going to resonate with more of people that are in that development. So I think it would be a great idea for the town of Vero to have that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
My name is Al Tatro. I live at 5355 Dominica Street in the Isles of Waterway. I'm assuming that most of the people that are in here live in gated communities, especially right where we are. I didn't see anything here or any mention that this new area is gated. Can anybody answer that for me, possibly? I'm assuming that it's not gated at this point.
Ryan, did you
Does anybody know
Madam
that?
Chair, sir, the commercial areas and the multifamily are open. There is an option to gate the single-family portion, but that's ultimately...
Okay, all right, so we're on the right track then. The idea is that where we are, we moved into gated communities from other areas that probably a lot of us live locally, Sebastian, Vero Beach, or whatever. This area here now would open everything up to anybody from the outside just to walk in to their neighborhood, use any of the amenities pretty much. I don't think I would feel too good if I lived there and people from the outside came in and said, hey, I'm going to play tennis today. You know what? I'm going to go lay on your beach. I don't think I'd feel too good about that, knowing that I'm putting money into an area that's why I moved there. So my concern is that are these people going to be aware that they will have their entire area open with little or no security? And that will also add a lot of traffic from who knows what will be coming in and around our area. That's all. That's what I got to say.
All right. Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
My name is Michelle Garcia, and I live at the Cove at Waterway Village. The only two things that I object to of this development is a hotel and the amphitheater, the hotel, and rentable apartments. If the apartments can be owned is another thing, but anything rentable, I am totally against. And hopefully you can see that, because I think this is going to bring down our home value. And I love living in Vero, and I came from Stewart, and Stewart got too congested, and I really don't want that to happen to Vero. But that project, the hotel and the rentable apartments and the amphitheater, I don't think is a good thing. And thank you for let me talk.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public?
Good morning, Barbara Lewis from 53rd Street. My concern is, I'm not sure if anybody is addressing this on any of this, but where is the canal? Or not the canal, but the drainage. Are we moving that? Are we covering it up? Are we taking this away from the homes on the south side? My second concern is if you can flip forward to the slide that shows the overview of the street. Yeah, that would be that exact one right there. As this shows on 53rd Street, you are taking a 4-lane road, bottlenecking that down to a 2-lane road, bottlenecking that into a dirt road, bottlenecking that down to a 1-lane bridge, and bottling that out onto 66th Avenue that has not been completed, and which is a racetrack for that spot at 53rd Street. The accidents that occur there, the almost accidents occur there every day. I do not think you have thought this through, your 53rd Street long-term vision of what happens to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to final presentations. Did you already have an opportunity?
I had one question.
Okay, please
Anybody
make it
address
quickly.
the traffic flow during this construction of this project and what they plan to do? Like when 58th Street was closed for about a year when, remember that? They had to go to 66th Street to get to Home Depot? Or has anybody said how are they going to get this equipment and stuff in and out without destroying, say, 58th Street? Again, it was just repaved. That's it, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. If you would like to speak, you need to come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
Ken Bradley, 5238 Turtle Creek Circle. I had asked to put up the 2030 urban service boundary lines, and for someone on the commission or somebody who knows, explain exactly what that means for the area that we're talking about.
Sure, Madam Chair. Not exactly sure what the question is, but here is the project site. You can see the underlying the North Relief Canal. So it's the I'll use round numbers, the 70 acres inside the urban service area, and then about 10 outside of the urban service area. And through the PD/T&D criteria, they are allowed to assign a relatively low density 1 unit per acre outside of the urban service area and incorporate that into the project. But that is all outlined in staff's report and is perfectly allowable. But the purple dash line is the urban service area boundary. It's essentially at the mid-block between 58th Avenue and 66. Once you get further south to 49th Street, the urban service area goes back west to 66th Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
Could you point the arrow to approximately how far beyond the urban service boundary is for the public?
Right where my cursor is. It's about about 10 acres outside of the urban service area.
And approximately how many units will be outside the boundary?
Let me show you the. Let's see here. It's a little bit hard to make out, but the urban service area boundary line is again it's essentially in line with these two activity areas. You can see here. Let me actually go to the full size slide. That might help. So here's
that's a single family area.
It's all single family outside of the urban service area, and that's their larger product type, the estate style lots. Open space parks and single family units are the only uses proposed outside of the urban service area.
But it's consistent with our current guidelines and also consistent with the 2030 plan?
Correct. Yes, and this doesn't move the urban service area boundary. Through the T&D process, you're allowed to, again, assign density
beyond the line.
Beyond the line, but it does not move the urban service area boundary. If this project were to be developed through a conventional development, it would not provide that same allowance.
And the developer is obligated for all infrastructure to that point as customary if it was within the boundary?
Correct. So there will be quote unquote urban or services, utility services within the project that are technically outside of the urban service area line, but the project itself is comprised of that. And that's similar to Providence Point to the south.
Okay.
There's also a roughly equivalent portion, 20% or so, that's outside of the urban service area.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. At this time, we're going to move on to final presentations. County staff, any final presentation?
Sure, Madam Chair, just a couple items to clarify regarding the gas station or convenience store. Typically, the commercial uses will be limited to those that are allowed in the limited commercial zoning district, which does not allow for gas station convenience store. They do have the ability, or would have had the ability, to add that as an acceptable use through the PD process, but that was not outlined, so it's not a permitted use at this time. One of the gentlemen mentioned the question about the optional developers agreement. Again, there are certain required improvements and conditions that must be satisfied, but the timing and the extent of those requirements can be further defined in a developer's agreement. Typically, when the county wants to participate collaboratively to perhaps move certain items along, either in advance of, for example, right-of-way dedication or roadway improvements, things of that nature. And then lastly, through our Public Works Director, we do have we do want to clarify one additional condition regarding the driveway connections on 53rd Street. I don't know if you want me to suggest that now or at the end once we've heard back from the developer. Dylan, that's up to you. Just to clarify, condition 1B, obtain Public Works approval of the final determination of the project's required 58th Avenue right-of-way dedication, the final design of the driveway connections to 53rd Street, or enter into developer's agreement for both of those items. So we just want to pin down the final driveway connections on 53rd Street will be done through future approvals or a developer's agreement.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions of them at this point? Otherwise, we're going to ask from Mandela Village for your final presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm just going to give the first part of it, and then Mr. Bialowski will be back up here. I just wanted to, pardon me?
Speak up. They can't hear you.
Hello?
You're good.
My name is Bruce Barquette, and as I said, I'm just going to give the first part of this, and I just have a few points to address. First one is there are a lot of speakers here from Waterway Village today, which is obviously a really well-designed community, and the residents really like it, and they have moved there because their developer did a great job. I want to point out that Waterway Village is approved with a commercial area inside Waterway Village. It was a requirement of the county, and the developer wanted to do it. When that project is finished, it will have a commercial area inside it because that's how it was designed, and that's going to be a great amenity to Waterway Village, and the residents should understand that.
Shh, this is his time to speak. Everybody else has had a time to speak, so I would just ask that everybody be respectful of the process. Thank you so much.
Well, and it's not in dispute. I mean, the county staff can support that. Secondly, I wanted to point out that one of the gentlemen said that 58th Avenue is destined to remain a two-lane road, but that's not the case. Waterway Village, the developer, is in the process of widening 58th Avenue from 49th Street all the way past 53rd Street, assuming that the county can acquire all the necessary right-of-way. It's going to be four-laned. Some of that right-of-way is going to be dedicated by this project owner, as well as right-of-way for 53rd Street, which is also important on the county's future transportation element. Now, projects like this, and this project in particular, are going to be donating that right-of-way if they're allowed to go forward. Of course, if they're not allowed to go forward, then that goal of the county is going to be frustrated because they would have to purchase that right-of-way. People aren't just going to give the right-of-way away in the absence of a project. So I think that is, when Ryan pointed out that's a public benefit, I wanted to just emphasize it's a significant public benefit. Thirdly, I think Richard pointed out that the Spring Hill Suites was approximately 350 feet away from, separated from Indian River Boulevard, and that, I'm sorry, my voice doesn't carry and this thing is too short and I don't really feel like speaking like this. Spring Hill Suites is approximately 350 feet from Indian River Boulevard. This hotel and commercial area are going to be over 500 feet and also separated by a water body with no access to 58th Avenue. And Spring Hill Suites does not negatively impact Grand Harbor whatsoever. There's never been a complaint from a Grand Harbor resident that, oh, there's a hotel across 500 feet away. And this won't affect these people at all either. I understand their concern. I don't blame them for being concerned. I'm glad that they came out to speak their issues. But the reality is when this project is built, that will not impact these people, these residents whatsoever. And I mean, I've been doing this a long time, as have many of the other developers in this room, and they can attest to that, and the planning department can attest to that. And then the last thing I wanted to point out is your planning staff and your predecessors have adopted an ordinance called a Plan Development Traditional Neighborhood Design Ordinance, which encourages mixed-use residential projects. Well, this is what they look like. This is what you have adopted and what you have invited into this community, and this is what those projects look like, except that this one is better than most. Richard and David spent a lot more time developing their communities than other people that have come before you. And as Mr. Solari pointed out, this is less than 5 units per acre. You're not going to see a better T&D than this. And if you truly have these in your code and you encourage them as you should, this is what you're encouraging. This is what you should be approving, in my opinion. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you.
Yes,
Mr. Barquette, I know you probably heard from planning staff a slight modification to condition 1B, I believe. Are you comfortable with accepting that change to 1B?
You know, I'm going to have to let Mr. David Knight and answer that because I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know exactly what it meant. I know that some of what was designed at Mr. Spirica's request, so I'm not sure what we're talking about. So
All right, I'm seeing a nod up, yes and down from Mr. Bielovsky, it looks like. So I think he will answer that question.
let the record reflect that Mr. Bielovsky agreed to that, not me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bielovsky, did you want to add anything to this conversation, or are you guys done with your final presentation? Okay, thank you.
I think my voice is louder than Bruce's, but years ago in 2008, when we started this T&D ordinance, we had workshops with rooms filled with people like this, maybe more people than like this, and we went through what people wanted to see with public comments, and we ended up with the T&D ordinance because that's what people felt the future of Indian River County development should be, and that's what this represents. Someone made the comment, he lived here for 5 years, and the developers and investors are just come to town, make some money, and leave town. I've lived here for 20 years. I'm actually very seriously thinking that I'd like to live in this community. I will probably run into most of you one time or another in Publix, and I hope we smile and chat and you don't feel like running over me with your shopping cart. We have put a lot of serious thinking into this. I appreciate the comments. I understand the comments. I understand about keeping the urban service line where it is. And this issue of density, and we don't want to be like South Florida. None of us want to be like South Florida. We wouldn't live here if we did. But as Commissioner Solari pointed out, he said 5 dwelling units per acre. In fact, we're 3 dwelling units per acre for residential. And even though we lap into the urban service area, which would allow us to have 18 more units, we in fact have 199 residential units where we could have 217 if we took advantage of our full density. So we're very mindful of those things. There were some issues raised about retail. We truly understand the issue of retail. That's why these are small retail facilities. We think there is still a future in retail that's essentially festive or gathering based, where people come because there are other people. This isn't a box shop. This isn't a department store. It's a very different thing. We have put a lot of thought into that. Someone talked about removing habitat. When I spoke about native Florida landscaping, I am talking about restoring habitat. It's a very, very serious thing. You all might want to go back and ask yourselves, and you probably should go to this workshop on the weekend that Audubon is having, because if your lawn is filled with exotic, non-native plants, it means the local caterpillars, sorry, and the bugs aren't eating your plants, which means the birds aren't feeding the caterpillars to their babies. And in the long run, that's habitat destruction. We have landscape architects that are so sensitive that they did a walkthrough of this site on Friday, and they sent me a picture. They said, we found some rare pineland something or other, and they immediately gave us a plan for rescuing that plant before one plant about this big, any earthwork, putting it aside, bringing it back healthy. I mean, we are very cognizant of habitat restoration and habitat protection. We take these environmental things extremely seriously. These aren't things to be kidded around with anymore. The health of the lagoon and everything else. Those of us who have lived here know how deep and serious these problems are. And again, I said, we're not some out-of-town guys who are just blowing in to do something, make some money, and go. We live here. We want to see a healthy environment for a long time to come. The question, no, the grocery store does not have a gas station. Absolutely not. The thing about traffic and creating more traffic, there's something called internal capture. So that means if someone living in Mondla Club decides that he needs a loaf of bread, he can walk, bicycle, golf cart, or even drive to the grocery store in Mondla Village. He's not going down 53rd or 58th to get to a Publix. We're actually taking cars off the road. If you live in Bent Pine or you live in Vero Lago and you want a loaf of bread, you can drive all the way to Publix, or you can stop halfway. So we're not putting more traffic on the road. If somebody wants to buy a loaf of bread, they're going to go buy a loaf of bread, or they're going to call Publix and have them deliver one. But we're not creating traffic by having a grocery store. We're actually, because of our internal capture, versus any other project that might be there, we're actually reducing the traffic that would come from our project. And we've done a traffic study. We've gone through that with planning and engineering staff. Someone said they were against rental housing. I'll just leave that for what it is. Some small amount of rental is a good thing for the community in general. It doesn't ever hurt the value of anyone else's house. Demand for this type of development that's an interesting question, because we had a market study done that tells us basically that there is a serious unfulfilled market segment in this world of people who care about native landscaping. They care about net zero energy. They care about healthy housing. They care about being able to walk to things. It's not everybody, but it's a very significant portion, and it's unfulfilled because, as I said, developers market by looking in the rearview mirror, and they don't consider those things. We have considered them. It's what makes us different. Obviously, the hotel is a point of contention, but I just will remind you that we went through this conversation with Providence Point. The conclusion was that it was compatible. We have done our best to minimize the impact in terms of mass bulk and scale and visibility from the highway, from either road, 58th or 53rd. So in that respect, I don't think there's much of an impact. And again, there is a clear precedent from not too many years ago, and I believe that is still going to happen. The question that came up, I'm not sure who raised it about this, maybe it was Mr. Reingold, about the condition, the additional condition. We've discussed that with Ryan. We're accepting that condition. So, any David will get up and contradict me. I don't know. I hope not. Any other questions, Commissioner Fleischer?
Madam Chair, one of the speakers had a question, and I said that he had nodded his head to answer it, and I want to make sure that the question was answered.
What was the question?
What is your proposed price?
Yeah. Thank
you.
That's the one question I'm going to be sorry not to answer, because we just aren't at the point of saying that. I think it'll be consistent with prices here in Indian River County. There will be some additional cost because we're providing amenities that other projects don't provide, but we're perfectly confident that people are willing to pay for those amenities. We're just not at the point where all the cost and everything are there, but we have to compete with everything else, and we think we have a leg up with our product, but that's kind of what governs us.
All right, Commissioners, any other questions?
I have just one.
The time for public input is over. Thank you.
Thank you. And David, did you want to say something?
Good morning. My name is David Etter. I'm one of the developers of Mandala Village. Richard Bylowski is my longtime partner. Mr. Reingold, thank you for bringing up that question. It sounds like a minor little change. What we want to make sure we clarify is, at the county's request when we started the design and engineering process a year and a half ago at least, they asked us to put our entrance road where it is across from Providence Point. We designed the whole project around that, and there's been a lot of discussion with the new Director of Public Works as to where the entrance would be preferred. It would be a major re-engineering effort for us to do, but Providence Point's entrance, for when they go forward, is going to be there. They can't move west because it impacts an eagle's nest and eagle conservation area. So we're agreeing to the statement with the caveat that it does not bind us in any way to be forced to move roads that we designed and engineered at the county's request.
So that's really not agreeing then.
Well, when Ryan sprung this on us 5 minutes before the comment period started, we didn't quite realize the context of it, and I asked him to add to it that our road system was designed at the county's request. And I'm not sure we can agree with that agreement if that's going to open up a major re-engineering effort, redesign of the entire eastern portion of the project, and make it almost impossible because we can't align with Providence Point.
Jason, do you want to address that?
What if we made that conditioned upon having wherever your entrance is line up with the eventual Providence Point entrance? That if we can get both of those.
This project has been designed. It's gone through 2 or 3 pre-apps. It's gone through 3 TRCs. It's gone through meetings with the county's engineering department. It meets the criteria. It gets very complicated and very expensive to put it off.
Understood. Staff has some concerns.
Particularly when we're following county guidelines. Had the county said, put the road here, we would have figured out how to do that. And when we came in for the first pre-app for the project, they said, we don't want the road here. Move it here, align it with Providence Point. And that's a year and a half of time, and I don't even want to think of the engineering cost that we have, because we've gone far ahead. We have the inside roads engineered, the drainage, all the utilities and everything else done. It's not a simple little point that can be covered in a paragraph.
Right, understood. But we will need to probably have staff mention to the board our staff's concerns about the location of the intersection.
Oh, absolutely. Our understanding is that there will probably be a restriction that a traffic light cannot be put there in the future, and we're not asking for a traffic light. The roads have been designed for right in and right out, left out there, and when you look at Waterway Village's entrances onto 53rd and I think it's the Isles, or the northernmost section, they're actually a little bit closer to 58th. They have a lot more units in there, and there doesn't seem to be a need for a traffic light there either. So we're not concerned about the traffic light. We're concerned about just about delays and efforts for making the mistake of listening to what the county asked us to do.
That is an interesting statement, Mr. Spear.
I will state that this isn't the first time you've heard of this issue from county staff. I want that to be clear. This wasn't the first time it was brought up. It was today.
We've had discussions, and my perception was we had the foundation of an agreement that everything is fine there. We're just never going to have a traffic light, and that's fine. We just don't want to open that discussion again. When we follow development guidelines and we go through repeated TRCs and pre-apps, it's just not fair.
Commissioner Slaughter, did you have a comment?
I was just wondering if we could maybe put up the schematic and just get real clarity on what the issue might be, especially in terms of traffic and safety.
And we have Rich here.
So if we put that up, and then I'll let Rich fill in the details where I'm off, is that main entrance that you see there is where the cursor is, where Ryan has the cursor, is fairly close to 58th Avenue, which it does line up with Providence Point's approved entrance to the south, which makes sense. However, staff has a concern that if a signalized intersection is needed there at some point in the future, at full build out and additional traffic, that is too close to 58th Avenue for another signalized intersection. So in the perfect world, staff would like that to be moved further west to a location where it's far enough from 58th Avenue for a full intersection. David is correct that initially staff had requested that to line up with Providence Points, which there's a reason for Providence Points being that far east, which it makes sense for those two to line up. However, it does, some time ago, staff had raised this concern, and it's just been a point that we haven't reached final agreement on, apparently.
So here's my question. What is the threshold for a signalized intersection, and how far from 58th would a signalized intersection need to be? And what is the difference in that distance from where the current entrance is and where the ability for a signalized entrance to be?
Rich Berger, Public Works Director. What I need to bring to the board's attention, when Providence Point did a developer's agreement years ago, they set the entrances that Mandela is using and Providence Point at about 850 feet from the intersection of 58th Avenue. All right. We've got a traffic study right now for Mandela that shows, a bunch of traffic, but it doesn't trigger any traffic signals or anything like that. However, it doesn't do anything for Providence Point. It doesn't show anything coming from the west. It's not what I would call a full traffic study, because we can't have this developer say, all right, Providence Point's going to develop X and have this amount of traffic. It's not feasible. What I need to point out is that in the future, if this intersection becomes a problem, we cannot put a signal at this. It's 850 feet from 58th Avenue. The minimum distance that DOT specifies that we follow is 1,320 feet from 58th Avenue to the next closest signal. This developer has been told that several times by myself when this all started. Yes, they have a developer's agreement. Yes, the developer's agreement puts the driveways at the location they've designed to. But they've been told, and I have made the comment myself in the development when they were coming through, that if and when a signal is needed, that may not happen, and we could close that full intersection if it becomes a safety issue. All right, we have the ability to just make that a right in, right out if it becomes a safety issue, because right now it's a full-blown intersection. So I just need the board to be aware that they've been given the opportunity to move that driveway so that when they are full developed and Providence Point or somebody to the south develops that property, that they have the option, or the county has the option, of putting in a signal. If we can't put a signal in safely, then we have to close the intersection. And that will mean that they'll maybe get a directional left, but they won't be able to cut through and go to 58th Avenue. So I just need to stress to the board that this is not a here and now problem as far as putting a signal in, but it could become a problem in the future.
So a follow-up question. Is there a trip threshold that would trigger the county to put in or require a light to go there, or is it a safety concern?
There's a DOT has a signal warrant study, and basically it takes 10 aspects. It looks at several things. It looks at crashes. It looks at left turns. It looks at a bunch of some other things that we look at. And if it triggers one of those, then we should put a signal in. Some people, a lot of times it's triggered by volume. Sometimes it's triggered by crashes. So, right now to say a signal is needed, I can't do that. We don't have all the information. I'm just wanting to make sure that 5-10 years from now, if this whole area develops into a commercial/residential node, we connect 53rd Avenue or 53rd Street to 66th Avenue. People start using 66th Avenue to 53rd to go over to US 1, and this development flourishes, and it's very successful, which we all hope it will be. But if there's a problem with people crossing traffic, then we have to address it, and we can't address it with a signal because it's too close to 58th Avenue right now.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Madam Chair, Rich, with the numbers you gave us, there's a 470-foot discrepancy. I understand you said, we can't put it where we can't put it. However, where do we are we able to make up that 470 in a different way? And in addition, there are some unknown factors on how well received these amenities will be. I've heard Disney-like, so maybe people will start accelerated trips. So really, there is some unknowns. There are knowns. There's 10 knowns that have to be calculated, but there are some unknowns. But my question is, where do we find that 470, or do we?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Basically, in a nutshell,
You said we need a certain amount of footage.
It's 1,320 feet. That is the standard.
And you said we had how much?
Hmm?
And you said we had?
We have 850.
So that's like 470.
470. They need, in order to, for the foreseeable future, in order to put a signal at that intersection to make it safe, they need to move their driveway 470 odd feet west away from 58th Avenue intersection.
And if I can interject.
I have no way to time the signals, put the signals, and not have the two signals conflict with each other.
And if they do not do that at this point, the risk is that if and when they need a signal, it will not be available, and their entrance and exit would be right in, right out only. They would not be able to cross and turn left. Correct.
We're again, it's speculation. A lot of times, a directional left, where people can go westbound and turn left into, or go eastbound and turn left into the development.
Mm-hmm.
Would be fine, but they can't come out of the development and turn left and go eastbound. But that's, again, it's speculation, but that's how you'd fix one of those. If you have an intersection that's a big problem, where you have crashes where people are darting across, 2 lanes of traffic.
So if they are unwilling to move the intersection, then that is a risk that they take.
That is a risk they take and the county takes in long-term planning.
Okay, Madam Chair, I have a question on that. So I pulled up the Publix to the east at US 1 and 53rd Street. We have a McDonald's on the corner. We have a vacant lot. And going off the property appraiser's map to the signal at 24th Avenue and 53rd Street, adding up those numbers comes out to 477 feet. That's a relatively new project just east of US 1 on 53rd Street. That services Publix, McDonald's, the CVS on the other corner, and the new assisted living that's north on 24th. So how did that work and 477 is just off the property appraiser. Maybe it's 500, maybe it's 525, but it sure as heck is not 12 or 1400. So I've gone in and out of that area frequently, and that light seems to work fine where it's at. I get, the green book or blue book or whatever the book, the DOT Bible. That project is relatively new. I'd say it was built after Providence Bay, if my timing's right, but I could be off on the years. So that light seems to function. How did DOT allow that one? I don't know, but clearly there's one that's in the 500 foot or less east between the signal at US 1 and 24th Avenue.
Okay. I can't speak for DOT. I don't know how long that signal's been there. I'd have to research and see why it's there. Was it there because of crashes? Was it there?
No, it was
for
part of
whatever
the
reason?
development.
I don't know. I can't answer that question without doing the research, but at the end of the day, I'd have to talk to DOT and why they let that one in.
Right.
Okay. Do you have any other comments?
Also, and the P&Z notes, was this issue brought up at P&Z? Because I read the minutes and I didn't listen to the tape, but I don't see the signal question as in the minutes from P&Z unless it was brought up, just going through the backup minutes that we have on the discussion.
Do you have the answers to that, Ryan?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, it wasn't discussed in any detail. It was discussed during TRC reviews. It's more of an engineering function. We didn't get drilled down that deep at the P&Z.
Right.
Okay. I'd like to make another comment or two, if I may.
Yes.
We're willing to accept the speculative future risk of a turn signal being needed or changes to the ingress and egress of the site. I'm not a traffic engineer, well, I'm not an engineer or an attorney, but we look at the future, we look at other developments right across the street where they're dumping a lot more traffic onto 53rd Street for, I don't know, maybe 5 times the number of homes. And there doesn't seem to be a problem there. And ultimately, as 53rd gets extended to 66, which is on the county's plans, and I believe a lot of it's funded, where there's going to be a 4-lane bridge going on to 66, that's going to relieve some of the traffic on 58th because people will be able to transit there. But when I look at the aerial and I think about the Eagle's Nest, Providence Point, I believe their entitlements have expired. They might have redone them. They may be moving forward. They may not. But if they have expired, it might be a time to just move their entrance to the far side of the Eagle's Nest. They also have ingress, egress on 49th Street, and we've not seen their final site plan, much less the one they're working on now. But I'd request approval. We change the condition that we're accepting the future speculative risk that sometime there might be a need for it, and we'll solve that problem if and when it comes by turn lanes in and out and good traffic engineering.
Yes, Jason.
And Madam Chair, for clarification, I think the fact that this issue has been raised, everyone's aware of it. It's the applicant has agreed to this condition that the intersection may be closed or restricted in the way that we've discussed. I think if that's a known factor, if the commission knows it, if it's been brought up on the record as a condition, and everyone knows that needs to happen, I'm okay with moving forward at that rate. Just knowing that the intersection may need adjustment down the road, just so that if that does come to pass, everyone has been made aware of that.
Okay.
And I have
Did
one
you
other.
have anything else for your final presentation? Okay. Commissioner Zork, did you have a
Yes,
question?
well, got the right people at the podium. The traffic study for Waterway Village includes the 850 student school site and the traffic that would come from the commercial site within Waterway Village. I would think they must have made some assumptions of traffic that would be generated from those two when they did their street plan, traffic lights versus stop signs.
I'm not familiar with the Waterway Village. That was before I was employed by the county. I'd have to go look at it and let you know.
Okay.
I'll get back with you on
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, please continue.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to be really picky about this, but just to point out, DOT could grant a waiver or variance for this light. I don't want to eliminate that as a possible solution. So I appreciate your comments, and I understand the risk, and that's great, but I don't want to eliminate that as a possible solution either.
Right, I just wanted to all be clear, because what staff's worried about is this isn't a today problem. It's a 5 or 10 years from now problem. And then if staff is coming in closing that intersection, we might have a group like this with different folks who now live in Mandela Village upset about the actions that the staff is taking because of future traffic on that roadway. I just think everyone needs to be aware that it's a potential concern going forward.
Right. I think the developers made clear that they're willing to accept the risk, but we want all solutions to be on the board, not just closing the intersection.
Yeah, but staff is good with that too. All available options on the board, just knowing that is one of the potential options that we may have to choose.
We want to make it clear that that would be a worst-case scenario and that you understand that and accept that, so in 5 or 10 years, when this comes back up, we're not having this discussion about how nobody knew. Yes, sir.
We accept that, but in 5 or 10 years, I'd like to say if it comes up.
Well, now we're just talking semantics, but we are on the part of final presentation. So if there is something you would like to add to your final presentation, that would be fantastic.
No, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time, and thank you, Ms. Reingold, for asking the question.
Thank you.
And so staff and the applicant, did we eliminate the change to 1B, or are we modifying the change to 1B?
We're modifying the change to 1B.
Okay, and so how does it read now?
You want me to take a stab at it?
Yeah, why don't you take a stab at it?
Madam Chair, Dylan, 1B will read, I'm shooting from the hip, but let's see here, I'm sorry. Obtain Public Works approval for final determination for the project's required 58th Avenue right-of-way dedication, comma, or enter into a developer's agreement for 58th Avenue right-of-way dedication, comma, and with the understanding that future driveway intersection changes may be required to accommodate future traffic, including but not limited to reconfiguring the driveway.
Reconfiguring the median opening.
The median opening and main driveway.
Does
Okay.
the applicant
Is that
understand?
understandable to the applicant? Yes. Okay. And Mr. Reingold, is that understandable?
Yep, I'm
to you?
good with that. David's good with that. Ryan's good with that, and Rich is good with that. Thank you. I just want to make sure that was part of the record.
Okay.
Just one thing for the record, DOT doesn't issue a waiver for this separation issue. It will come from county staff.
Okay. Noted. Yes, Mr. Reingold.
Oops. And if I may, before the board takes any vote or has any deliberation, I just wanted to first thank the audience members for coming today, putting in their comments. What you noticed is that we haven't had one of these items for a while, but I will note, you heard at the beginning of the meeting, there was a discussion about how this is a quasi-judicial item. This is taken up and considered by the board in a much different context than most of the policy decisions that come before the board. In a quasi-judicial context, what happens is that a rezoning request like this needs to meet the requirements of the comprehensive plan. And if those requirements are satisfied and met, then then the burden is shifted onto the government as to whether to deny or modify that consistent with the criteria set forth within the code. So what happens during the hearing is this is your opportunity, the public's opportunity, and anybody's opportunity to present evidence to the board of why it does or does not meet the comprehensive plan or doesn't meet the criteria within the code. And so the critical part of that is oftentimes, and the case law is very clear about this, lay opinion about just general traffic impacts, general noise impacts, just general concerns like that are not deemed to be sufficient, what is under the statute deemed to be, or not on the statute, but on the case law, competent substantial evidence. And that is the type of thing that the board needs to rule upon, is the competent substantial evidence that has been presented at the hearing to the board. And with that, board, I just want to make sure, Chair, that we kind of heard, again, the criteria and the concept behind quasi-judicial decisions, and I'm happy to answer any questions on that.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification. Mr. Brown.
And Madam Chair, I'd just like to add overall, I think as Dylan had mentioned, we haven't had a lot of these lately. And when we do, it seems like there's concern from some of the public about becoming South Florida. I think our goal all along has been to not do that. I think our current ordinances that we have in place provide protections against that. I think we have gone through the process. Folks have talked about concerns about traffic. That is part of the process, is the traffic study, as we talked about, a traffic issue that staff was concerned about and for all to hear. But we've looked at this from a holistic standpoint. Just like to point out a couple of things. It's 2.52 units per acre. I believe that the T&D process, as I think Bruce had mentioned, is a process that is put in place to encourage development that is positive. And I think the mixed use component is good. It keeps those trips from getting out on the roadway. The more you can capture internally, that's a good thing for the community. The 2.5 units per acre is definitely not South Florida variety development. I think, as Commissioner Solari had mentioned before, many times their densities go to 10, 20, 50, 100 units or more per acre. with this type of development, as development in the past, whether it's including Waterway Village, which had 1,400 plus units approved, and it initially did have commercial in there. I think that was subsequently changed through later changes in their approvals. But folks are living in a place like Waterway Village. Some of the folks that are here in a place that was developed, there were folks that came and talked about their concerns about that development's impact on the community when that happened. I can rest assured. But we're going through that same process here, which is a good process. We're glad to have everyone out here, and we believe we do this in the proper manner, open and transparent, hear public input. But I think the process that we are going through here is this similar process that we've done in the past, that has maintained the character of Indian River County to not be like South Florida, which is there is a system in place, and we are going through that process right now. So I just wanted to point that out. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there anything else from staff or the applicant for final presentation? If not, I'm going to ask that all documents and evidence have been admitted to the clerk. And with that, sir, public input is done.
Can I ask one quick question of the developer that you might have already anticipated?
No. Quickly, very quickly.
Look, the question is, if the hotel is not approved, how does that affect their plan?
The hotel is part of the entire project, so the project gets approved in whole.
The whole thing or nothing?
Correct. Thank you. All right, at this time, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, questions, comments, concerns? Now is a time for deliberation. Commissioners, anybody have any?
Well, if there are no questions or anything, Madam Chair, I will move staff recommendation to approve the proposed plan development, traditional neighborhood design, rezoning, and conceptual PD with the conditions 1 through 5 with 1B as modified at this meeting.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Solari, a second by Commissioner Zork. All in favor? Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, sir.
Could we have a little discussion?
Yes, we certainly may have discussion.
I just want to say that this has been a very interesting morning, and I appreciate everyone's comments. And it's nice to have the opportunity to hear your thoughts. One of the thoughts was brought out about something about our past, yeah, me personally, I enjoyed it. I didn't get offended. I'm from Brooklyn. Okay, and I lived in probably one of the largest mixed-use environments in the nation, and I lived in the same building as the barber and the shoemaker. That was downstairs, and that's where I went. But I appreciate it. I also appreciate what we have here. And with that said, I just want to comment on the developers. I know these developers a long time. I find them to be extremely innovative, creative, proactive, and people of their word, and incorporating a lot of the needs of the community, the vision of the community is exciting, especially when it's so carefully done and well thought out. I do admire them. With that said, we're asked to do two things here. Reclassify a piece of ground, rezone, and then approve a preliminary conceptual plan. Some of the objections that we've heard today, as was discussed and pointed out, are beyond control. We talked about the citrus. Citrus is gone for a different reason. Something has to be done. and I fully support positive, creative development that's going to maintain the patina of our way of life. Our way of life. The way of life that many of you have chosen and understand in Waterway Village, Bent Pine, and the adjacent areas. Part of this proposed plan is a hotel. I want you to know I've been perplexed. Knowing these guys for so many years, and we didn't communicate, I just don't understand how this is going to be sustainable and complementary to the citizens that reside in the community. I am not the visionary, although Don Quixote was a visionary, and we know how that worked out, and Nostradamus was a visionary, and we know how that worked out. Yes, there are plans and there are visions, but I don't see this to be complementary to the community overall. And I do see a complication with the traffic. I do see a problem. If this project was closer to US 1, as it was compared to a hotel that is nearby Grand Harbor, a well-fortressed, gated community that's guarded and gated and mounted, and you can't get into Grand Harbor from the hotel. You have to be invited and approved and registered. This is a different environment. It does not compare. So it's like one of these objects does not fit with the other, but we're comparing it anyway because it's kind of similar. It's residential development, commercial development, and, the hotel. I also see a challenge with shared benefit with residents, outsiders as they've been called. I wouldn't call them outsiders. I would just be non-residents. If the non-residents and the hotel attendees and the residents all want to share the same amenity, the draw, there's going to be conflict. There's going to be some rally points. It might be law enforcement involved. It's going to be a point. I think the attention, it's all in the details. And I don't know if it can be, I feel very uncomfortable approving something that has so many unknowns. And it's very hard because I care for these guys. I think they're brilliant. I don't know about this hotel concept, so I cannot support it at this point. If you can't support one portion of it, and that gentleman just said, well, what happens to the project? I know what happens to the project. That's it, okay? Unless they want to come back and say no hotel. But then they have to reduce the amenities. Then they reduce the amenities, then the overall ambiance. This project mirrors so many other projects that didn't quite make the mark. It also mirrors some projects that did make the mark. They're in Orlando. They're south of here. I am a strong believer in plan unit developments and traditional, I fully supported traditional value communities with other amenities. I don't think a hotel is an amenity, so I can't support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reingold, for clarification, legally we are required to determine if this project meets the comp plan?
So the first level of review is whether it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. And then at that point, if it is consistent with the comprehensive plan, the local government can deny or modify it accordingly if it is then found to be inconsistent with some other standard of review or criteria set forth within the code.
Thank you. Mr. Sweeney, does this meet the elements of the comp plan?
Madam Chair, there is an analysis within your staff report, and it is found to be consistent with the comprehensive plan and the county land development regulations.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Solari and a second by Commissioner Zork for approval of staff recommendations with the discussed changes. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
The motion passes 3-1 with Commissioner Flesher dissenting and Commissioner O'Brien absent. Next item, we'll move on to community development, consideration of draft impact fee update study report.
Thank you, everybody.
Do y'all want a 2-minute break while everybody clears out? All right, we're on break. Meeting, if so, I'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order. And the next item is community development, consideration of draft impact fee update study report. Welcome.
Right. Thank you, Chairman Adams and Commissioners. Good morning. For the record, I'm Bill Shute, Chief of Long Range Planning for Indian River County. And I'm just going to start off briefly just giving a little quick background, and we're going to hand it over to Tyndall Oliver and Associates, Negan Camp, who's representing them. And then I'm going to do a little wrap-up, real short PowerPoint at the end of hers, a few slides. How we got to where we are. So back in 2014, that was our last impact fee study update. And included as part of that update, the board ultimately adopted impact fee rates at values that are less than 100% of the actual rates calculated, using an affordable growth methodology to reduce impact fees. And ultimately ended up updating 6 of the impact fees out of the 9 to decide not to collect 3 impact fees. So after that impact fee study update, we were on a schedule to update every 3 years. And in 2017, the board reviewed the schedule for impact fee update and ultimately decided to change that to a 5-year program, so updating every 5 years. So the regulations were amended, and here we are today. And on we ultimately initiated that 5-year time frame on March 26, 2019, when the Board of County Commissioners approved a contract with Tyndall Oliver and Associates. And again, it was to update 6 of the county's impact fees. We're excluding correctional facilities, solid waste facilities, and library facilities. Part of that contract was to update the local growth rate and the availability of buy-down revenue using the affordable growth model, and to evaluate the county's 3 separate transportation impact fee benefit districts, the North, Central, and South County, and to see if that could be reduced to either 2 or 1 benefit district. So that brings us to where we are now. We have a draft version of the impact fee report for the Board of County Commissioners' consideration. And this too includes reduced rates, as mentioned, for the affordable growth methodology. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Negan Camp for the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, Negan Camp with Tyndall Oliver. We have a presentation that just goes through the background and then addresses each of the fee areas. And we kind of go through them briefly, but then in the case of transportation, we'll spend a little bit more time since that's the fee that increased the most. So as far as background, as Bill explained, last study was completed in 2014, and the county is projected to continue to experience growth. So the 6 impact fee program areas are being updated as part of this study. So the impact fee, by definition, is a one-time charge to new development, and it covers the cost of new capital facilities. It's not used for replacement or maintenance, but it's for new capital facilities. And the primary goal of impact fees is maintaining the level of service. It does calculate the cost of growth, gives a uniform approach to all new growth, and they are most needed when there's high growth being experienced as well as limited alternative funding. So the study is using what we call a consumption-based methodology, which is also your adopted methodology and is used by many Florida jurisdictions. It charges new growth for the capacity that is consuming, and the way the fees are calculated, it the rate does not allow the jurisdiction to recoup any existing deficiencies. So by law, we are not allowed to charge new development for any existing deficiencies, and that's what this formula guarantees pretty much, that you cannot do that. So the basic impact fee formula looks at cost to add capacity for each service area. Again, the capital cost, what is costing the county to build these facilities today. From that, we look at how the same infrastructure is being funded, and to the extent that there are any non-impact fee revenue that's being used, like the sales tax, fuel tax, a portion of it is coming from future development, and they get a credit against the cost. Then this net cost is multiplied by demand, which is measured in terms of travel for transportation, and student generation rate for schools, and then the population for all the other fees. And an affordable growth strategy is more of a policy tool. It does look at how the county will grow, and it looks at available funding that's coming from existing development. So we only have to give credit within the impact fee formula for what the future development will generate. But just like them, more of the revenue is really coming from existing people. So this tool kind of converts that and gives the county a buy-down ability for select targeted land uses. So then you can vary the adoption percentages using the limits of the buy-down based on future growth and available funding. For each of the fee areas, again, we start with looking at the capital inventory, look at the level of service, both in terms of what's achieved and what the standard is, the goal is. And then the cost component looks at what is costing today to build these facilities. And again, credit takes into account any contributions from future development. And then we have the net cost and the fee, as well as a fee comparison to surrounding jurisdictions. So again, out of those 6 impact fee areas, 3 of them are county-wide, public buildings, schools, and transportation. 2 of them are only charged in unincorporated county, parks and law. And then the emergency services is county-wide, excluding Indian River shores. So one tool that the staff wanted to introduce this time is the affordable workhouse mitigation tool. And so the proposal is not charging anything for single-family homes with less than 1,000 square feet, the small homes. And the way we can do this is we look at the permitting levels of that size. And it was very small, like it was 0.3% of all homes or so on. So as long as the revenue loss from this select group is considered de minimis, which is usually the 5% is the general rule of thumb, then the county has the ability to reduce the fee or not charge them any fee and still be able to build the facilities where everybody else paid for. So that's that one approach. And then the other approach is the 50% discount for homes that are 1,000 to 1,500 square feet, as long as they qualify under affordable housing criteria that's tracked by nonprofit housing providers. And that's done through the recent legislation that allows the counties to reduce it for qualified affordable housing criteria and not have to backfill. That's that House Bill 7103 that allows that now. So this slide shows a summary of all calculated fee at their full rate. And what I wanted to mention here is in terms of residential land uses, you can see that about 90% of the total fee is from transportation, schools, and parks. So those are the 3 largest ones. And then in the non-residential, transportation makes up about 95% of the total fee. And those are also, when we look at any community, schools and transportation make up anywhere from 75–80% of all infrastructure they have. They are the most expensive infrastructure local governments have to provide, and that's why the fees are much higher in those cases compared to, say, a fire fee or a law enforcement and so on. This slide provides a comparison of the 2014 full calculated fee to updated fees. And so the fluctuations in the fee rates are because of the demand changes. There has been some significant changes to the trip generation rates that goes into multiple fees. And I'll talk more about that when we get to transportation. But for on the single residential side, it's about 25% increase, and then the non-residential varies quite a bit, along with some decreases. These are just sample land uses, and I think you have more like close to 30 land uses or so in your fee schedule. And then this one shows what the recommended fee compared to the current adopted fee. So then some of the increase is moderated through the policy discounts. So you can see that the residential is like 15% increase for single family instead of 25, and so on. So if we start with public buildings, level of service as far as countywide remained relatively stable, didn't have much impact. Cost of providing these facilities since the last study increased, which increases the fee. The credit also increased, so there was more investment into this into public buildings compared to the last study, and that has an effect of decreasing the fee. So between all three of them, the net cost increased about 9% compared to the full fee in 2014. So when we look at the apples-to-apples variables, it's about 9% increase. Demand for single-family remained relatively stable, like a 3%. So the single-family rate went up about 12% for public buildings. So in terms of the fees, that resulted in a $830 full fee for single-family. Staff recommended fee reduces that to $415, and current adopted fee is about $370. So that would be about a 12% increase from the current adopted fee. And this slide shows some comparison to nearby or other jurisdictions. So the fee for single-family homes, for example, ranges anywhere from $250 to $934 in this category. Offices anywhere from $140 to $620, and so on. Emergency services, the level of service increase, there are new stations, cost, which increases the fee, cost increase, which also increases the fee, credit increase also. Again, there was quite a bit of investment into this area to build those stations, so that reduces the fee. So overall, that increase in credit overpowered the other increases in cost, and the net cost declined about 15%. And then demand was, again, couple percentages, so the single-family rate decreased about 11%. So this is kind of showing you overall this fee decreased for all categories, all land uses pretty much, compared to the 2014 full adopted, it was adopted at 100%, full calculated and adopted percentage. And then this chart compares it to other jurisdictions. So again, the fees range anywhere from $90 to $1,250 in some cases. Those are the districts, and then even to $600 after that high end. Law enforcement. There's a slight decrease in level of service because they had the same number of officers but bigger population. Cost, which decreases the fee. Cost increase, which increases the fee again. And then the credit increased as well. That decreases the fee. So overall, net impact cost increased about 10%. And then, there's pretty much no change in demand. And so the single-family rate went up about 12%. So again, this shows you the full calculated fee and the recommended fee. And that basically is giving you a decrease compared to the current adopted fee. And in this comparison, the fees for single family range from anywhere from $60 to $587, and you see a big range in other areas as well. Parks and recreation. So the level of service went down slightly. That reduces the fee. Cost increase, that increases the fee. And credit increase, that decreases the fee. So the net cost here was an increase of 5%. And demand stayed relatively stable, so it ended up being an increase of 5% for single family. And again, full calculated fee for single family ranges from $1,700 to $2,300, and the recommended is about $600 to $900 for single-family tiers. So that is again, the recommended fee ends up in a reduction in terms compared to the adopted fee. And this comparison, the other jurisdictions are ranging from $600 to $3,600, depending on the facilities for single-family land use. And this has a few more jurisdictions, again, going from 920 to 2,000 or so. Transportation had the highest increase of all the fees. Cost increased, credit decreased, and demand increased as well. So overall, the single-family rate went up about, doubled pretty much. So that's the one that we wanted to spend a little bit more time explaining. So the way the transportation formula works is 1 lane mile costs about $4.3 million, and that carries about 8,600 vehicles. So the cost for vehicle miles of capacity is $500. So for one vehicle to travel 1 mile costs the county about $500 each time you have a new one added. An average home generates about 23 vehicle miles. So when we multiply those two, the total cost is about $11,500. From that, we subtract any credits, again, to account for future development's contributions is about $2,700 here. And so the net fee is the difference, is about $8,800. So as I mentioned earlier, the demand component had a lot of changes, and the primary changes from the trip generation side. So IT 10th edition went back and deleted all the studies going before 1980s, add quite a bit of studies after that. So we saw much more significant change in this update than we typically see during their updates. So you had some trip generations increasing, some going down, and then they also reorganized some of the categories. So this is kind of giving you the examples of the magnitude of the decreases. So you had some increases going up to 30% or more, some decreases that much too. So these were significant enough that they made a difference in the fee calculations. In terms of cost component, we looked at both any kind of local improvements as well as the estimates, and then supplemented that from data from other jurisdictions to have a bigger sample. So the costs have been increasing. This is the DOT's long-range estimate trends, and you see the boom and the decline, and now we are starting to increase again. And this is going back to 90s. So in terms of county cost component, we looked at a longer trend. During the last study, we were looking at a 2008 to 2013 timeframe. And we had actual local improvements about 1.8 million, as well as other jurisdictions, they were averaging about 2.2 per construction cost per lane mile, and we end up using 1.8. This study, we are looking at 2012 on, and what we have is about, local estimates are about 2.5 million, but they seem to be mostly the estimates, not actual projects. Other counties average about 2.9, so we combined all of it and ended up about 2.8 million for the construction costs per lane mile for the county. So that's the increase from 1.8 to 2.8. And then similarly, state costs, again, did the same type of analysis and ended up about 3.8 million in this thing compared to 2 million in the last report. In addition to construction costs, we also have the right-of-way design and then inspection and so on. So when we combine all of them, the total cost is about 4.3 million per lane mile that goes into the formula. In terms of the credit, again, we look at anything that the county is using, any state projects, and this is an ongoing investment credit. This is not a specific developer credit. So the credit ended up about 24 million per year, and most of this is coming from, on the county side, from the sales tax. It's very little from the fuel tax. And one of the challenges for transportation funding is that the fuel taxes are not very inefficient. They are on a per gallon basis. They are not indexed. A state is able to index their pennies, but the local fuel taxes are not indexed. So what we find is when we look at over time, a penny in 1994 is only worth half of its value today because of both the inability to index and the fuel efficiency. The value of the fuel tax is decreasing, and most communities are using it primarily to cover maintenance or resurfacing type costs. So here, what we found is about 85% of your investment is coming from sales tax, and the rest is just fuel tax. So the final calculated fees are about $8,800 for single family, and the staff recommended to reduce that to $6,600, which would be about a 56% increase. And then you see the other categories as well. So even with their moderations, this fee is the one that has the most increases compared to the other ones. And this is comparing to some other jurisdictions. Again, the single-family fee is anywhere from $1,600 to $7,500. And then in this one is, again, $1,200 to $8,600, depending on where you are. And in all of these, we try to show the study date to give you a perspective when it was last studied, as well as the adoption percentage, so you can kind of compare it a little better. In the case of transportation, we also looked at the benefit districts. Currently, the county has 3 districts, and they are, when we look at the radius from the center of each district to the boundary, they tend to be 2-3 miles in each one, and the average home travels about 6 miles, so they are overlapping. So we recommend that to reduce that to 2 districts, and we feel like that will give you that will still fulfill the requirement of fee payer receiving the benefit of it, as well as it aligns the projects better, and other benefit of that puts the city of Fellsmere mostly in one of the 90% of it gets to be in the northern district instead of being split. So for these reasons, we thought it would be, it's advisable to reduce it to 2 districts. Educational facilities, in their case, service delivery, cost and credit all resulted in about a 15% decrease. That's primarily because of a Department of Education requirement not to exceed the student station cost that they publish. So that sort of puts an artificial cap. And then the demand generation rates decrease, so overall, single-family rates decrease about 23% compared to the last study. So the full fee ends up being about $4,680 for single-family. Staff recommended fee is about $1,300, so that would be a reduction from the current adopted fee of $1,700. And when we compare it, this chart kind of shows all the counties that have school impact fees with the study date, adoption percentage, current rate, and then their single-family full rate. So Indian River County was the second lowest, and it will be still the second lowest. I think the only other one lower is Citrus County with $1,260 right now. So again, this is the summary, just to recap. This is comparison of the full fees, and then the recommended fee changes. And with that, today we are here to get your input, and then we'll deliver the final report and go through the implementation process. And Bill's presentation.
Thank you. Okay for me just to wrap it up, and then, okay. I'm going to swap seats here real quick. Okay, just stepping back for a moment and looking back with our impact fees. Back in 2005, that's when we started collecting the 9 separate impact fees. And as mentioned earlier, 2014, with our impact fee study, we only did 6 of the 9 impact fees. And there was a time period in there, too, where we were pulling back, not collecting certain impact fees during the economic downturn as well. So with this, again, we're looking at the 6 separate impact fees, excluding libraries, corrections, and solid waste. That would be including public buildings, fire, EMS, law enforcement, parks and rec, transportation, education facilities. Now, with respect to administrative fees, with this proposal, we're proposing to reduce from 2.5% to 2%. So there's a proposed reduction in that cost as well. And in terms of historical trends and responsiveness, the adoption of affordable growth models is in response to the changing economic conditions. So in the next few slides, we're going to look at the changes in commercial industrial growth permitting since 2013 and 2014. That's not really covered in the consultant's presentation. We're going to mention a little more about the insufficient funding for transportation projects, and we're going to talk a little bit about the affordable housing reduced or exempt impact fees. So here we have, this was included in the staff report. It's just a graph, and we dressed it up a little bit more just to add some more clarity. But it just shows the building square footage since 2008 that has been permitted in the county, and how it started off in 2008 at 538,513 square foot. And that was in the midst of the Great Recession. And then, of course, after the Great Recession, we've had the effects that have lasted several years. So you went straight down to 2010 to 63,566 square foot. Went to a peak in 2012 at 289, then came back down in 2013 to 90,803 square foot. And that was the start of the last impact fee study. And the decision of the board at that time to reduce impact fees for non-residential and apply some percent reductions. Then you can see it climbed back up 2015 to 345,260, went back, it's a moving target, went down to in 2017 to 246,000. 2018, we were at a level that is above the 2008 rate. And when we put this slide together, we didn't have the numbers for 2019 in our community development report where I pulled this from, but just to let you all know, it actually came back down into the mid to high twos for 2019. So here's just a quick summary slide of talking about the recommended impact fee, general affordable growth, and policy discount percentages. Now I circled in blue there the non-residential that was carrying forward the 2014 policy decision of the board, having 26% rate for public buildings for non-residential, 40% rate for law enforcement. Actually, let me make a correction there. I think law enforcement overall, we went from 100% down to 40% for this impact fee study. But transportation is proposed still at 45% for non-residential. Now, just to add a little more to it, so if we look at the percentages, public buildings, that's the same as 2014, 50% and 26%. Emergency services is the same at 100% for both residential and non-residential. And just mentioned just a moment ago, 100% was a proposal, or what we had for law enforcement last time. They're proposed to go down to 40% with this study. Parks and Rec, and Negan pointed this out, 69% was in the 2014. We're proposed at 40% this time. In transportation, again, we had 45% in 2014. That's what we're proposing again for non-residential. For residential, it was 100%. We're proposing 75%, and public education proposing to maintain it at 28%. Now, in the staff report, we had yellow highlighter in there, and we just had various general policy decision points discussed. I'm not going to go through here in these slides in detail. Now, with respect to transportation overall, level of service D is the adopted standard for the impact fee study purposes for all roads on the county system. Now, this is lower than the achieved level of service. So both the calculated and proposed transportation impact fees are, just to note, both the calculated and proposed transportation impact fees are insufficient to maintain the achieved level of service. We're having a gradual degradation of transportation system overall with the adopted level of service D. We have additional funding for transportation projects. That bullet point, that could be achieved by adopting the full non-discounted impact fee rates for non-residential uses. This would free up other funding sources that could be used for transportation. It would slow the degradation of the level of service for the overall transportation system. With respect to the new single-family residential categories for affordable housing, so when the board originally approved the scope of services for the impact fee study, we did not have the affordable housing portion in there, but the board also directed the staff to work with the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee and come up with ways to promote more affordable housing in the community. So that combined with the fact that the state legislature also introduced, as Negan pointed out, legislation that got approved that allows you to reduce or exempt for certain types of affordable housing impact fees. So the proposal came out that we would, or is to charge a 0% impact fees no impact fees for single family less than 1,000 square foot. And as Negan pointed out, that would be the de minimis exemption. And then the other proposals for 1,000 square foot to 1,500 square foot for very low and low income households, for nonprofit housing providers, do a 50% reduction of impact fees. Now the intent here is to have that enforceable through the deed restrictions by those nonprofit housing agencies or maybe lease agreements. So there would be, that would be the layer that would be controlling this, and we would be basically making sure that those were being implemented. Okay, so I promised this part would be short, so I'm going to go right into the recommendation here. So staff recommends that the Board of County Commissioners review the draft report, provide direction to the consultant and county staff on desired policy revisions and or edits to draft impact fee study update report, provide direction to staff on whether or not any additional meetings are desired to review the draft report or an updated version of the draft report, and authorize staff to proceed as appropriate in scheduling and conducting those meetings. Number 4, authorize staff to draft an ordinance for adoption of the proposed new impact fee schedule and for any needed text revisions to the county's impact fee regulations. And number 5, authorize staff to advertise for a public hearing to consider adoption of the new impact fee schedules and any related ordinance changes. The date of that public hearing to be after any BCC related concerns and requests are addressed. Now, with that said, I want to make a couple more quick points. With this study, after everything was published, we did send out emails to different Treasure Coast Builders Association, to the Chambers of Commerce, to Indian River Neighborhood Association, various entities. So they were provided via email with information about this. And I also want to make a point that we did invite school district staff to be here. So if you have questions about the school impact fees, they are here in the audience as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I know you want feedback on the different policy decision points, correct? Do you want to go through those one by one and get that feedback, or how do you want to do that? Or what would be easiest for y'all?
I think that could work.
Is that okay with my fellow commissioners?
Bill thinks that'll work, that's fine with me.
Okay. So the first decision point, it looks like, is going to be.
Well, I guess stepping back too, I guess you can look overall if you want to talk about the commercial, industrial.
I just want to make sure you're getting the information you guys need to move it forward and bring it back. So
actually, I can pull that slide up that has the general percentages there. So if you're in agreement with these percentages, or you're feeling that.
Do you guys have any comments on these percentages or questions? Go ahead.
I do. On the discount percentages that are listed, were you coming up with those to try to maybe end up at a targeted value when you applied the percentages? I know in transportation, whether it's a willing seller right-of-way take or a eminent domain take, either way they're still both expensive. So I get that, but that is a significant adjustment.
So I think in 2014 what we did was we lowered the adopted rate on the commercial per the direction of the board. The direction at that time was concerns about whether commercial was being overcharged for its impact, also concerns about whether that was a negative impact from an economic development standpoint, that, hey, if you have an employer coming in here, you don't want to tell, hey, your impact fee bill is $300,000 or whatever, so we drove the money at that. I think basically at what could be supported based in that report largely, and we've just generally carried those forward with some tweaks. For instance, I think on the transportation we were at 100%. We're currently at 100% on residential, and staff made a recommendation to lower that to 75%. So what you see here today is a reduction from that 100% on the residential. But I think for the most part, with the exception of a couple of changes like that, they're largely the same percentages that we had in the past. There were maybe a couple other changes, but for the most part, basically the same rates that we had done in 2014.
Does that answer your question, Commissioner Zorg?
It does, and a general question on the table J1. When we look at a multifamily project that comes in and it's a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms, obviously you would think that a 3-bedroom rental apartment would generate more traffic than a 1-bedroom. But we do everything by density units. So if they're allowed X units per acre, we don't differentiate by the size or the number of potential occupants by bedroom. Does any other county address it as more of the actual user type versus just by the unit?
Not so much for transportation, because it's depending on the available travel data, and that was one of the land uses that the IT changed. And it used to be there were categories for condos separately, townhouses separately, different type of multifamily. And they combined it all, and they felt like this is most representative of the best available data that they have. So per bedroom and so on, we see more like in the school impact fees sometimes, and maybe even some of the other ones that are population-based. But for travel, it's harder to do.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Commissioner Fletcher, do you have any comments on this? Commissioner Song?
My only comment on the commercial part is I think it seems to be working, so I don't see any great reason to change. And I don't think that that's going to be the driver of impact fees going forward in the next 5 to 10 year period, because as with the internet sales and everything and the drop of retail, I think that the issue in this county is going to be repurposing of a lot of commercial space rather than the addition of a lot of commercial space. So I'm happy with that aspect of it.
That sounds good to me. What's next?
So, turn this back on. All right, so I'm hearing that we're okay with all the percentages as proposed on the slide. Going back to the affordable housing aspect, is the Board of County Commissioners okay with the proposal for both of those instances?
Yeah, we'll have a couple questions, but basically, okay. I just want to make a point with the 1,000 square foot of dropping all the impact fees for them, as I read it. And I think that people should keep in mind that it's the government policies which drive up a lot of the cost of housing, and addressing the government policies, which I think we would be doing by dropping the impact fee, is not a gift from the government. It's recognizing a fact about how these high impact fees are impacting a part of our community, and it's trying to balance things out the right way. So before anybody else spins that as something else, I want to make that point. On tracking it, so you figure there'll be a way in place. I mean, one of the first questions that are coming up is, okay, you've reduced the cost of a unit, 1,000 square foot unit, by $8,000. What happens to the second buyer of the property? Because you certainly don't want to put in 100 affordable housing units with no impact fee, which has a substantial value, and then see the properties turned over very quickly. Someone makes a quick profit, and the benefit of having no impact fee is basically lost to the community. It then goes just to the specific individual. So you mentioned a little bit about that, but a little more clarification would be helpful.
Okay, so with the 1,000 square foot or less, the thought process there was that it was a de minimis impact, so it was a very small percentage. And we were not looking initially at putting deed restrictions on those similar to the 1,000 to 1,500 square foot residences. And if the board's uncomfortable with that, I guess there's pluses and minuses. So you do enter that territory of potentially it might not benefit all affordable housing. It could be really small units for retirees, perhaps. But we started looking at building square footages, and we started looking at Habitat for Humanity houses, for instance, and 1,000 square foot seemed to be a point where you were not getting many built, but they could maybe benefit some, the lower or very low income. But as it stands now, correct, we're not putting limitations on the deed or anything as proposed. But if the board thinks that we should be doing that, then certainly we want it on that path.
Sure. I mean, I want something simple, and it may be that over a 10-year period, 10% each year, well, for the first year, 90% of the impact fee needs to be recaptured from sale, and then it drops each year. You don't want to lock in things forever, but I certainly haven't thought this through and don't know about other people. But you're going to end up making a market for something that we have no intention of making a market for if that mechanism isn't addressed some. And then there's the issue of what has happened, as my understanding is, in some of the areas which we thought might have been going to affordable housing by reducing lot sizes and stuff, is that they build bigger houses on a small lot. And in this case, we could build 1,000 square foot. What happens then if someone does a 600 or 800 square foot addition? I mean, I just don't know. I mean, do you trigger all the impact fees? Or, I mean, if you trigger all the impact fees, then in my view, that would be self-correcting.
Yeah.
But
that would be the normal. Anytime anybody puts an addition on, if you switch from one category to the next.
Okay, but then it would be it wouldn't be just the marginal impact of the addition, it would be the full impact.
Correct.
Okay, that would then, as I say, would be self-correcting. So before you come, you're going to be coming back to us again, right?
We do have 2 more meetings with the consultant and our contract, so.
If it would be possible to just look at if areas where they do not have an impact fee for 1,000 square foot or less, or those things which people would call affordable, if other areas do have a mechanism to claw back some of that if it's just sold to a non-affordable person, just to see what other communities do. That's one area that I'd probably like more information on going forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yes, on those lines, I was happy to hear how Habitat manages a similar scenario on the entire price of the house. They have something that's recorded with part of the sale that has a clawback provision that possibly some of that language could be used for the impact fee value. Everybody's goal is to incentivize reducing the cost of housing, and we don't want somebody to, for whatever reason, flip the house and that becomes part of their additional upside. So there may be something we can glean off of Habitat's program of how they do their clawback, and it's very, very simple, very easy to follow, and it's the policy they use nationwide. Where on the 1,000 feet or less, there's sort of not a qualifying, but the 1,000 to 1,500, I would feel a little more comfortable if we had that same requirement for both, and only for the reason I was doing some searching on this, just surprised to find how many close to 1,000 square foot cottages that are on the market for 570,000, but they only happen to be close to 1,000 square feet. So I'd like that same level of scrutiny even to the smaller house. It is small, but there seem to be some small things, I guess they would call it cottages, which if you can sell it and it's on a lot, you can.
I'm not exactly sure I'm following what you're saying. I apologize.
Oh, on the 1,000 to 1,500 square feet, we're going to follow the income guidelines, but on the 1,000 or less, it seemed to be that we weren't going to have that scrutiny level.
Okay.
So I'd like to just have it for both of those.
And in that one, I'm just not sure, because without the drop of the impact fee, we're going to have fewer and fewer 1,000 square foot homes built. And what the second one is a more limiting group of people who can get it. But if it's 1,000 square feet, and I might not be able to articulate this so well, you may have more people building the 1,000 square foot, and that is still going to go to people up to, what's the median income?
So it varies by family size?
No, what's the median income in the county? Household. It will capture everybody from a lot of our beginning first responders school teachers on down.
That's the goal, right?
Well, and that is such a large group that it won't be captured just by the very low and low income after a while. And the more of those type of units you can grow, the greater that supply, the more downward pressure that puts on all like houses. So it has that double benefit. So in that's one area that I'm not sure of this, but I think if you're too careful on it, you're going to undermine what you really want to accomplish. And I'd rather err on the side of building a couple thousand extra 1,000 square foot houses, which I don't think is going to be really an issue. So again, I'm not sure on this, but I'm just trying to think it out. And a lot of this stuff, you know, is thinking out as we go, because again, at the Affordable Housing Committee, Bill's given us so much good information that it's difficult to keep up with.
Okay, all right, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Anything else on this issue? Commissioner Fleischer, anything on affordable housing? No? All right. Thank you. Bill, what's next?
Okay. Well, you know, I guess I'm hearing we want another meeting, so we'll talk a little bit about more of this, the housing part of it. And you breezed right through all the the policy amounts, so I think we're there.
The other one is transportation.
Yeah.
Do you think it's fair to blame all the increased costs on transportation on Rich Spierka?
Well, you know.
I think we can do that.
I think so. Couldn't even get him to lift his head on that one.
So I'm just going to use my cheat sheet here back in the recommendation here, just to make sure we're hitting these again. So we talked about the draft report some. Policy revisions and or edits really just comes down to the affordable housing part, that small component at this point. That's all I'm hearing. We will have additional meeting, maybe just a little bit to talk about that. So let's see, draft report and updated version, and authorize staff to proceed in appropriate scheduling and conducting those meetings. So authorize staff to draft an ordinance. So, you know, I think if we have one more meeting, then maybe after that meeting, then we would do the authorized to draft an ordinance.
And that's a question I have. There's a couple items for discussion here. Our next step can either be bring back an ordinance for a public hearing, or we can have another meeting to discuss these issues a little more. So we can go either way on that, whichever way the board prefers. Seems like there's not a whole lot of questions, so we could go forward with the ordinance as the next step if you want. But we can always have the opportunity for another meeting to discuss any of these items to get clarification if you want.
I wouldn't want to slow the process down, so I'd be happy to just go to the public hearing with the understanding that if we wanted to, in terms of conditions, say for the affordable housing, what is affordable housing, what is low-income housing, we can come and revisit that issue.
Okay.
So that way it gives time to, I think this is a good thing to discuss at the Affordable Housing Committee. And we don't know at the Affordable Housing Committee where we're going to end up with anything yet. You know, so I would like to be flexible enough so that based on what the committee comes up with, the issues can be revisited. And even after it's in place for a year or two, we can come back to see. But so as far as setting the impact fees, I'm happy to go ahead with the public hearing. As far as some of the conditions behind it, I think we should be flexible enough to be able to come back and revisit. That makes sense.
So we want a little bit of both. Can you guys make that happen?
Well, no, the fees, the amount of the fees would be good on, but it's just a matter of making sure that they're accomplishing what we want them to accomplish. We may need to learn a little more.
Okay, so it's going to be evaluating over time too. I think that's what I'm hearing as well.
Pardon me?
It's going to be evaluating over time.
Well, I mean, once the impact fees are in place, we'll have to track them, the housing unit ones, affordable housing unit ones, to make sure that they're accomplishing what we thought would accomplish. That's probably a better way to say it.
Okay. Is that good? Other comments, questions, concerns at this time? No?
Okay, so then I guess the fifth one was that we're going to move along with the public hearing. We're going to advertise for that, and we'll figure out what works out on the BCC schedule at this point. I didn't bring a schedule, but
okay.
Coming meeting.
Okay, so let me see if there's anybody from the public that wants to comment on any of this. Yes, welcome.
Good afternoon, commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. Joseph Paladin, president of Black Swan Consulting. Two things. I'd like to make a comment, and I also have a question for Tyndall Oliver. The comment is on this, don't confuse affordable housing with just square footage. I mean, we just had a project come forward earlier today that's talking about having houses of 850 square feet. That no way is going to be affordable housing. So we need to keep that in mind. I don't think that we should eliminate impact fees for under 1,000 feet, because I can tell you as a developer, I've had several people approach me about doing developments of these tiny homes, small houses. It's not going to be affordable housing. So going on with what Commissioner Solari said and also Commissioner Zork, I think we need to separate the two. Second, on impact fees, I'd like to know if there's a position on consumption use impact fees. Has that been discussed? We discussed that with Tyndall Oliver maybe 9 years ago or so. You've never came back with improvement on what we have, because what we have is under Chapter 1000 of our LDRs, Chapter 1005, it says the only consumption use impact fee that's approved or applicable would be a bridge from the mainland to Orchid Island. That's ridiculous. So is there any study being done on that to change that? We said we changed it years ago, and we never have.
So consumption-based impact fees.
Yeah.
What it does is it actually calculates the average cost of providing the infrastructure, and then from that it subtracts any credit. So it's a pretty flexible, non-project specific impact fee.
But where this question came up was, say you're building a park in different districts, because at that time we had several districts. We started with 9, went to 7, went to 6, went to 3. Now we're talking about going to 2. So it's a lot more complicated back then than it is today. So if you're going to build a park off State Road 60, and everybody in the county is going to use it, it was brought up to have that based on a consumption use impact fee. And we said we couldn't do that because under our LDRs, Chapter 1005 says we cannot do that. So we decided then we would change the LDR so we could have a little more flexibility in the future. I'm saying you should consider that when rewriting your formulas.
I think we are. But.
And so I think what we're looking at is a consumption-based impact fee, right? And we're using that as a better way to do it rather than just the improvements based. That's the other way you can do is say, hey, we need these 5 parks or we need these 6 roads. So I think we are doing that here.
I'm good with that. I just I didn't hear anything about it being addressed. So.
Okay.
But on the 850 square feet, I'm definitely against. Me as a developer shouldn't be against it. I'm definitely against no impact fees under 1,000 feet.
For me, unless it meets the criteria it's going to.
Exactly. That's an entirely different criteria.
And a first responder's price point may be different than another entry-level person, so that number can sway, but as long as it's...
As long as it's based on something besides square footage.
Right. Yep. I agree.
Thank you. Others from the public? Yes, welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Cheryl Vidito, and I'm President and CEO of Indian River Habitat. I just wanted to thank the Madam Chair and the board for the discussion for the update study, Bill and team, with respect to impact fees, as well as your consideration for the reduction around affordable housing and the financial impact that has on us. So I just wanted to say thank you for that, and I look forward to the discussion at the Affordable Housing Advisory Council meeting to further define, perhaps, what affordable housing looks like and square footage and that sort of thing. I also, because Habitat has been mentioned, I just wanted to offer, are there any questions that I might be able to answer from anybody this morning as it relates to Habitat and how we do things? Or maybe that's better said at the AHAC meeting. Affordable Housing Advisory Committee.
Just one, that document that you had explained to me how you have that clawback provision, some of that language might be something at least worth Dylan and Bill taking a look at to see how it's written.
Certainly. We call that a shared appreciation agreement with our home buyers, and it is a recorded document. And the essence of how that instrument works is over time, we, like other developers, right, have found that when you develop a home with the advantages of a 0% interest mortgage and that sort of thing, and partnering with your families in sweat equity, that there are investors that will come in and try to pretend that they really need an affordable house. And how do we qualify that, or how do we protect the mission of Habitat, is through that shared appreciation. So the longer you live in that home, it's a tiered agreement. So the longer you live in that home, the less Habitat shares in the appreciation that you might receive when you go to sell that home. But I'm happy to share that document with anyone who may be interested, certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Others from the public? Welcome.
Hi, Chris Murphy, 780 Black Pine Drive. And I just have a question about the $4.3 million per lane mile statistic. I'd just like to hear a little bit more about what the source of the statistic is, and does that exclude utility relocation costs from that cost?
It does. It does exclude utilities, since they are typically funded through the utility department. And the source is really both the local projects that are either built or estimates, as well as the recent bids from other counties throughout Florida. So
is the data that goes into creating that available in the final report as it appears?
It is. We have it's in the main report as well, but then there's a cost appendix. I think it's like Appendix C or D. It just says transportation cost component, the title of the appendix, and it has all the details. You can see all the projects, all the averages. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Others from the public? Seeing none. Commissioners? Questions, comments, concerns, or we need a motion?
I'm happy to move staff recommendation with the additions per the discussion today.
I have a motion by Commissioner Solari, second by Commissioner Flesher. All in favor? Yes.
Is there anybody in the audience that's here that didn't hear a question that come up, or you have anything in particular that you would like to ask or have us include in the next program? Because I see some interested folks in the audience, and just want to make sure you can let us know if there's something that you need.
Hence why I asked for
Okay.
public input.
I know.
But in case that was unclear, thank you. Anybody, you're always welcome to come up and let us know what
Marty's
you may or
just
may
sitting
not want
there
to know.
just waiting. I just thought he'd hop up.
All right, so no other discussion or input. We do have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with Commissioner O'Brien absent. All right. Next item is utility services. Thank you, gentlemen and ma'am. Welcome, Vinny.
I guess it's good afternoon.
How is it afternoon?
Record, Vincent Burke, Director of Utility Services. Just a short history. Back in April of 2019, the Windsor Properties had submitted a consumptive use permit application to the St. Johns River Water Management District. Through a series of requests, there were multiple delays and extensions granted by the district. You recall last week there was some discussion in our Commissioner Zork's item with respect to the consumptive use permit and the interest from the utility department with respect to this issue. So at the board's request, we reached out to Mr. Mark Justice from Windsor and Mr. Jim Vitter from BGE, the hired engineering consultant for Windsor. And on Friday the 17th of last week, both Eric Charist and myself met with the representatives from Windsor to go over just some general questions with respect to the costs associated with the potential extension of the 3,000 linear foot as mentioned in the BGE report. The fact that we had questioned whether or not it was a regulatory issue to dewater and line the pond. They said it was not. It was based on some information that they were of the understanding. So we sought clarification with that issue. We just wanted to have a general discussion with those representatives. So the meeting went very well. It was probably about 45 minutes. They are interested to continue discussions with us. They were going to look into the issue of perhaps having a joint conference with the district and the utility staff with respect to the loadings and or the mass loadings that would be submitted to a pond that's also being used for stormwater purposes that eventually has a discharge structure to the lagoon. We had questions about the location at Wicklow Way where the current 8-inch reclaimed water main terminates. We had mentioned to them that this goes back to, I believe, 1990 when Sea Oaks wastewater treatment plant was in operation, and there was a developer's agreement with Orchid Island, and the line was run to the Wicklow Way. So for 30 years, it's been sitting outside the doorstep, but they had concerns about some of the water clarity if it were to drop into that lower pond, and had requested that it be moved to the north. So they had mentioned that they were not prepared to connect at this time, but they did bring up the 5-year requirement by the district in the CUP 270-5. That's consumptive use permit 270, 5th iteration, that requires Windsor to, by year 2024, provide a feasibility analysis to connect to the reuse water. Staff had mentioned that we'd be willing to speak. We were notified that there's 2 entities up there at Windsor. One is the Community Association, the other is the club. We were told by Mr. Justice that these are separate entities, and so there may be some interested parties that would also like to get some more information. So staff had volunteered to go up to Windsor to speak with some of those entities with respect to the reuse water, reclaimed water, and to answer any questions that these folks may have with respect to the nutrient levels and or some of the current regulations that are in place today. They said they would get back to us and appreciate that, but we just wanted to let the board know that we did reach out to the folks from Windsor. We did have a fruitful discussion, and again, it centered in on the 5-year requirement from the district that's written into their permit with respect to the feasibility study. So that's really the gist of where we are at this particular moment in time. There are some additional things that Mr. Vitter with BGE was going in, to look at with respect to the pond lining. But we offered to have maybe a joint conversation with the district in terms of, what level of treatment would be necessary to be able to discharge or reclaim water into a surface water pond with respect to the nutrient loading that was discussed in the BGE report. With that, I'm available for any questions that the board may have.
Are there any questions?
Yes, I have a few.
Mm-hmm.
On their use of the nutrient loading definition that they used in their letter, did they defend that? I don't have the copy in front of me, but it was, when you would read it, it sounded like we were putting out the most worst reuse water possible, which is clearly not true.
We had mentioned that to them, Commissioner. They really weren't in a position to defend that, but we illustrated that they were using different points in time to be able to illustrate the point. So, for instance, the total phosphorus that was used was not the annual average that would have been, I think, more applicable, but was a momentary point in time that was really 5 times what it was being put out at the particular plant. So, they acknowledged that maybe that was the case, but they didn't really dive into any details with respect to the nutrient levels.
So they used a snapshot of one particular moment when our number was high, but not the annual average, which would have been a better example of the type of reuse water we produce.
Yes.
For folks. So that's unfortunate. Any chance, I know it wasn't part of the request, but the real frustration was St. John's of how, they granted extension, and then we get the letter that they've already finished it and released it. The complaints really with the process with St. John's, that they were very clear to me how we could look at things before the approval was granted. So at some point we'll need to chat with them. I think with the window, the 2024 date, maybe we can simultaneously move forward with, or if there's interest to do this, the idea of if you have a project existing or proposed that's greater than X size, I'm not looking at forcing reuse water on very small projects, but if you're a 100-acre or 200-acre or more project where you have the funds to work and build in a reuse network, that it becomes a mandatory connection. That would also be a second way to get these larger projects to take some of this reuse water. If they all took a little, it would help, because without reuse, you have to at some point stop your septic to sewer conversion. You have to monitor that so that you don't run out with where you can place the reuse.
I would agree that, I hope St. John's has an understanding of how difficult it is for us to provide. They want us to provide reuse to more folks, and I think that is a good goal. However, it's hard for us to do sometimes when folks have other options. So I just hope that St. John's recognizes that we are taking steps and we are offering to provide reuse to various customers, and you know, within their rights, they're not taking us up on that. And you know, I would also like them to consider when things aren't financially feasible for us. They don't seem to have that question for things that they require us to do.
Right. Good point. So at some point, maybe we can relay those on to the St. John's folks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? No? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for the update. All right, the next item is County Attorney Matters, Demolition Lien. Mr. Reingold. Oh, Mr. DeBrawl, welcome.
Good afternoon. Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. Back in 2017, we demolished the old Club Valley, which is located on Old Dixie, just south of 41st Street. The cost of that demolition was $77,160. When you add in engineering fees, asbestos survey, and administrative costs, that pushes the demolition to $80,694.82. We ask the board to approve a lien on the property at that amount. I would be happy to ask any questions.
I have a motion by Commissioner Flesher, a second by Commissioner Solari. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, anybody from the public? So sorry.
Ready?
Okay. Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with Commissioner O'Brien absent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kath.
Next item, Mr. Reingold.
Thank you very much. County Attorney's Office seeks to have a scheduled attorney-client session with the board concerning Indian River County versus 22 beachfront properties. This is the customary use case. Then we're looking to have that scheduled for February 4th. Discussion will be confined to settlement negotiations and strategy sessions related to litigation expenditures. The meeting would be attended by the Board of County Commissioners, County Attorney, County Administrator, and a court reporter. And is expected to last about 45 minutes. County Attorney's Office simply recommends that the board schedule for the attorney-client session for a time certain of 10:30 on the February 4th. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Fantastic. Any questions for
Move
Mr.
County
Reingold?
Attorney's recommendation.
I have a motion by Commissioner Solari, a second by Commissioner Flesher. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with Commissioner O'Brien absent.
Thank you very much.
Next item, disposition of real property ordinance. Mr. Reingold.
Thank you. On December 10th, the board directed the county attorney's office to draft an ordinance which would allow for the use of commercial realtors for the disposal of real property. County Attorney's Office has drafted language for your consideration today that actually has several different options included in it. One is the use of the real estate agent who could then market the property. But also we've added in sort of a modified traditional bid process, which would include a minimum bid. And then also we've added in a third process, which would be that in the event FDOT is doing a sale of real properties that is in the same project as a county-owned property, that we could sort of bundle together and coordinate with FDOT. And then the fourth option that we included in was a sort of request for proposals process. This would be in a rare circumstance where maybe the county is not necessarily just interested in price, but maybe also be interested in sort of what's going to happen on the property and future development options for that property. So maybe there might be instances in which an RFP process might make sense. Just County Attorney's Office recommends that the board consider the different options and then direct the County Attorney's Office as to which of the options they would like the County Attorney's Office to include in a future ordinance. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. Commissioners, comments, questions, or concerns? No.
Still reading again.
Oh, okay. It has been a long meeting. And I know this was one of Commissioner O'Brien's items, and he's not here.
Right. I just have one question on where you'd mentioned that if DOT is selling property in a same project, after seeing the recent DOT potential sale of the Szechuan Palace building, that was going to be a sealed bid, I think, or because we're trying to get away from that to get a higher value. So if
Yeah, and Bill would know more about that, but I would just say it's sort of going to be the board's option. So if we
Okay.
want to work with FDOT, then we could, but the board could certainly say, we're not happy with going down a minimum. Let's go get a real estate agent to help us out on this, or this is a piece of property we're really interested in what the future development is. Let's go an RFP route.
Okay.
I have a question. If we were to go with a real estate broker or agent, would we have to put that service out for, how would we choose who that would be? RFP, RFQ?
I mean, we would probably use an RFQ or RFQ to
services
just
agreement
sort
or
of pick
something?
out real estate agents, and certainly would work with Jennifer Hyde in making sure we comply with the purchasing manual.
That's what we've done for auction
Okay.
services and things like that. So
Okay.
I would recommend that.
Commissioner Solari, do you have any
I've got nothing on this
wise
one.
advice on this
No,
one? No?
I mean, as you pointed out, that, this was something that was of great interest to Commissioner O'Brien. I trust that he reviewed it before he had to go to Tallahassee. We understand that. And I don't know if,
Dylan, would it mess up your time frame if we just held this to the next meeting so he could be here for input?
I have certainly no problem with holding it up. I just, he didn't have any additional comments for me on this.
Yeah,
item.
second, yeah.
But if you would like it to bring it back on the 4th, I'd be happy to.
Okay.
I think that's most appropriate, right?
We have a motion by Commissioner Solari and a second by myself to table this till February 4th. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with Commissioner O'Brien absent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to solid waste disposal districts. We have
Move the approval of the minutes of the meeting of October 22nd.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Solari and a second by Commissioner Flesher. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, request to approve amendment number 1 to work order number 3 for Geosyntec to provide consulting services associated with Phase 1 of the former South Gifford Road landfill redevelopment plan.
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Flesher and a second by Commissioner Zork. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Next item is a standardized recycling label license agreement with Recycle Across America.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Solari and a second by Commissioner Zork. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Next item is a change order number 7.
To tally?
Yes, I wasn't going to try that, but thank you. Tally. Does somebody want to?
Comments, Marty?
I know we got into a rhythm there. We just want to throw you guys off, so apologize for that.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Himanshu Mehta, Managing Director, Solid Waste Disposal District. In front of you today is the change order number 7 to Thale. We basically are wrapping up the project. We've achieved substantial completion on the project as of January 1. The engineer is working through the contractor on the final punch list items, and we're anticipating being done complete with the project by the end of this month. So this change order is for reconciliation of a lot of the project items. There were some quantities that they went over on, some quantity they were under on. So overall, this change order is not in adjusting any sort of funding, but there were some additional items that does require an extension of the final completion by 43 days on the project. So I can answer any questions you may have.
Are there any?
But they will be finished by the end of the month?
That is what is anticipated right now. They're going through the final punch list items. CDM's being very thorough in all of their detailed review and punch list items. So the contractor, I see emails going back and forth. They're addressing each of their items. So
days, Commissioner Solari, they have 10 days.
As long as it doesn't rain.
Yeah, that's my problem. Move staff recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Solari and a second by Commissioner Zork. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
thank you.
All right, anything else for the good of the order? Seeing none, we stand adjourned.
noises. At times there were fires on those bridges. Why? Somebody could flick a cigarette on the bridge, being dried lumber, it would go in the fire. It could have been that maybe some people wanted a new bridge and thought if they burned the bridge down, perhaps the bridge organization would put in a new bridge. And it could have been a jealousy factor, because at one time there was some jealousy